Chapter 236. Oscar, Ning Rongrong, and the rest were anxious as they watched Tang San fly out. They knew that Tang San wasn't injured, but according to the tournament's rules, once he fell out of the arena, he would lose his chance to return. On the other hand, Li Hai narrowed his eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smug smile. However, before he could smile, the blue-silver grass shield tablet in front of Tang San shone with bluish-green light. Blue-silver sea. Just as Tang San was about to fly out of the fighting stage, he let out a loud cry. In the next instant, the vine-like blue-silver grass on the arena seemed to have received an order from an emperor. Countless vines intertwined and grew crazily, entangling together like waves, quickly forming a net. After catching Tang San, he threw him back to the center of the arena. What a troublesome brat! Li Hai frowned as he looked at Tang San, who was standing not far away from him. I underestimated you. Tang San looked at Li Hai again. Although they were both rank 80, they couldn't rely on the All Heavens Mall to increase their cultivations after reaching rank 80 because of the upper limit. Because of this, they were equivalent to early-stage rank 80 Soul Masters in terms of soul power. On the other hand, the people from the Martial Soul Hall had stabilized, especially Li Hai. If he was given a soul ring, he could become a Soul Dolua at rank 83 or even rank 84. Kid, you're really arrogant. Li Hai snorted. Now it's my turn. Tang San locked his gaze on Li Hai. He held his clear sky hammers with both hands and condensed his soul power. Just like when he fought Sima, he used the disorder-splitting wind hammer technique. Clang, clang, clang. The clear sky hammers struck Li Hai's body again and again. In a few breaths, he struck 73 times. This was the maximum number of strikes that Tang San could use with his current soul power. However, Li Hai's aura was still stable even after Tang San's 73 strikes. Looking at the other party's calm and collected manner, it seemed that he was still waiting for Tang San's 74th hammer strike. Is that it? If you can swing your hammers 2 more times, I'm afraid I'll be in the same state as Sima. Li Hai looked at Tang San expressionlessly. However, your hammer technique is quite impressive. I'm sure only the direct disciples of the Clear Sky sect can practice it. No wonder Sima couldn't get rid of him. It's settled. Looking at the calm and composed Li Hai, Tang San took a deep breath and shouted again. The moment his red soul ring flickered, the clear sky hammer in his hand rapidly expanded. The black light released a frightening aura, and he viciously smashed it towards Li Hai. Let me see how powerful this move of yours is. Kai's expression didn't change as he watched the clear sky hammer come closer and closer. His 5th soul ring lit up again. Blades of Azura. In an instant, the blue saber and clear sky hammer collided together. Blue and black intertwined. Clang. Amidst the deafening sound of metal colliding, although Tang San did not fly back as far as before, he still staggered back 10 meters. Even though the heaven-shaking hammer had neutralized 90% of the blue blade soul force, it was that layer of soul force that had struck his body that had caused his chest's blood to roil and his arms to ache. On the other hand, his opponent, Li Hai, did not move at all. Only a hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. Was that the 100,000-year soul skill of your clear sky hammer? As expected of the strongest attack-type tool soul, Sima's defeat was not unjustified. The killing intent in Li Hai's eyes did not diminish, but it did not affect his praise. Just as I thought, although Tang San is ridiculously strong and even defeated Lord Sima, he is still not Lord Li Hai's match. As far as I know, the reason Lord Li Hai is still at rank 80 is because he has been searching for a 100,000-year soul beast to obtain a 100,000-year soul ring. In the VIP seats, the Martial Spirit Hall disciples looked at Li Hai with eyes full of admiration. Hi, that kid's defense is a little strong. Since we can't hurt him, let's start with his teammates. A red-clothed man flew to Li Hai's side. His martial soul was a scythe with chains. Our thoughts are the same as Zhou Feng's. Let's get rid of the others first. After a while, the 6 main attackers of the Martial Spirit Hall team, aside from the heavily injured Sima and the auxiliary soul master, stood side by side. Then I'll listen to you. Li Hai did not stubbornly insist. His gaze moved from Tang San to Ning Rongrong, Oscar, and the others. Stay alert and get into a formation. Following Tang San's words, the 8 figures of the all-heaven shop flashed at the same time. In an instant, the 8 of them formed an orderly formation. There were 4 rows in the formation, 2, 3, 2, and 1. Tang San and Wang Fan were in the front row. Ma Hongjun, Xiao Wu, and Zhu Zhuqing were in the second row. Oscar and Ning Rongrong were in the third row, and Dai Mubai was in the last row. What an interesting little guy. Looking at the formation Tang San and the others had formed, the 6 members of the martial spirit hall let out a sneer. Then, their soul rings flickered. Li Hai was still holding the blue scythe in his hand, and the blade was releasing a sharp chill. Zhou Feng was holding one end of the chain, and the sharp scythe was twirling and dancing. As for the other 4 people, one of them was holding a 6-meter-long halberd, one of them was holding a pink folding fan that was releasing specks of light, one of them was holding an iron rod that was engraved with patterns, and the last one was holding a long spear. Amidst the sound of breaking air, the 6 figures of the martial spirit hall rushed towards Tang San and the others with terrifying soul power. Tang San, we can finally see the power of this thing you prepared. Wang Fan was full of anticipation. I won't disappoint you. Tang San's lips curled into a smile. Then, he coldly glanced at the 6 members of the martial spirit hall, and in the next moment, he took the lead and went up to the martial spirit hall team. The 8 little guys from the all-heaven shop actually took the initiative to go up to them. In the spectators' stand, the crowd of spectators revealed astonished expressions. They nervously rubbed their hands, as if they were worried for Tang San and the others. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Suddenly, a wave of strange buzzing sounds came from the arena. Then, under everyone's gaze, the 8 little guys from the all-heaven shop took out a ball-shaped object at the same time. Now's the time. As Tang San's voice fell, the 8 people from the all-heaven shop waved the ball-shaped object in their right hands. Their forearms trembled in a strange rhythm, and the 8 of them moved in exactly the same way. The moment they opened their 5 fingers, their fingers seemed to disappear into thin air. At the same time, the ball-shaped object in their hands flew towards the 6 people from the martial spirit hall. What's this little metal ball? It doesn't have any soul power. You can't be thinking of using it to hurt us, right? One of the soul sages from the martial spirit hall laughed coldly. But before his mocking voice could spread, his eyebrows suddenly furrowed. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The metal ball that Tang San and the others threw out suddenly stopped moving forward. Instead, it started to spin violently. As it spun, the holes on the metal ball shot out dark yellow needles one after another. These needles seemed to have a mind of their own. Every single one of them shot out in a curve towards one of the people from the martial spirit hall. Be careful, don't be careless, Li Hai shouted. He was the first to light up his defensive soul ring. At the same time, he swung his blue blade at the incoming needles. The other 5 people didn't hesitate and followed suit. Dang, dang, dang. Amidst the continuous buzzing sound of metal, the needles bombarded the 6 people from the martial spirit hall. At first, Li Hai, Zhou Feng, and the others didn't think there was anything special about these needles. But as time passed, they quickly discovered something strange. These countless needles had a specific trajectory. No matter how they struck, they would always shoot towards someone in a curve in the air. Heavens, what did the martial spirit hall encounter? The spectators in the stands stared at the stage in disbelief. In their eyes, the 6 people from the martial spirit hall were in a ball-shaped space filled with needles. In this small space, densely packed needles repeatedly shot towards them. No matter how they slashed, the number of needles did not decrease. Even if he swept away the needles around him, the needles that were swept away would borrow the force of his sweep to attack Xiang Ling. On the rostrum, Chu Bei looked at Tang San and the other's masterpiece with a gratified smile. The Tang sect's number 10 hidden weapon technique, Batwing Samsara, coupled with the number 9 hidden weapon, Dragon Beard Needles, was not something the martial spirit hall could easily break free from. Chi chi chi. In the air above the stage, the 6 people from the martial spirit hall were attacked by the needles from all directions. At first, the 6 of them relied on their mechs to defend themselves. But as time passed, more and more soul power was consumed in their bodies. On the other hand, The energy in the needles didn't decrease, but increased. Under this situation, the 6 people from the martial spirit hall looked worse and worse. Their frowns deepened. They tried to break free from the needles, but the needles seemed to occupy a strange position and followed them like shadows. Wherever the 6 of them moved, the needles followed. Crack. Finally, with a crisp sound, a crack appeared on the neck of the man with the rod. In an instant, the densely packed needles seemed to have found a vent as they crazily surged into the tiny crack. In the next moment, the man with the rod had a twisted expression. His body was covered in blood, and he screamed in pain. The other 5 people didn't have time to care about the injuries of the man with the rod. A series of cracking sounds could be heard, and cracks appeared on their mechs. In an instant, heart-wrenching screams could be heard from above the stage. It was heart-wrenching. When the ear-piercing screams disappeared, the audience in the stands stared blankly at the stage. They couldn't regain their senses for a long time. At this moment, the 6 people from the martial spirit hall were curled up in pain on the stage. Their bodies were covered in small holes. Flesh and blood flowed out of these holes like a small, bright red flower blooming. Chapter 237. Li Hai, Zhou Feng. How are you guys? The support-type soul sage called Xiao Tong's expression changed when he saw the pitiful state of his companions. The staff in his hand lit up and hit the 6 of them. Is the martial soul hall defeated? Those fellows from the All Heavens shop actually did it. What was that little metal ball they threw out? It's so powerful. It actually broke through Li Hai's defense. Do you think we can hurt a soul sage if we have that thing? Forget it. Didn't you see that the All Heavens shop's disciples threw out the metal ball with the same hand gesture? There must be a secret behind it. The spectators in the spectators' stand recovered from their shock and locked their gazes on Tang San and the others. The Snowy Night Emperor, White Tiger Emperor, Yu Tianhao, and the others on the main stage were also stunned. Ning Fengji was so shocked that his jaw almost fell to the ground. Boss Chu, what was that thing that Rong Rong used? Ning Fengji looked at Chu Bei excitedly after witnessing the terrifying power of the metal ball. He could tell that the metal ball wasn't a martial soul, but a weapon that could be mass-produced. As a sect that focused on support-type soul masters, what they lacked the most was offensive power. If they could have such a thing by their side, even if its power was slightly weaker, the 7 treasures glazed sect's disciples' ability to protect themselves would increase by leaps and bounds. The sect's overall strength would also take a huge step forward. Dragonbeard Needle. As his plain voice fell, Chu Bei looked at Ning Fengji. What's wrong? Has Sect Master Ning taken a fancy to this little thing? Yes, I am. Ning Fengji nodded. I wonder if Boss Chu can mass-produce it? The Snowy Night Emperor, White Tiger Emperor, and Yu Tianhao all pricked up their ears when Ning Fengji asked this question. They were very interested in the Dragonbeard Needle. Well, Chu Bei purposely dragged out his words and rubbed his fingers. As long as you have the money, you can have anything you want. Ning Fengji, Yu Tianhao, and the others looked at each other and sighed. Money really is omnipotent. Hearing Chu Bei's words, Ning Fengji and the others looked at each other and sighed. We must win this battle at all costs. Just when everyone in the spectator stands thought that the battle was over, Bibi Dong's gaze landed on Li Hai and Zhou Feng. His cold voice was filled with majesty. On the stage, when Li Hai and Zhou Feng heard Bibi Dong's cold words, their bodies trembled slightly. They could not care less about the terrible injuries on their bodies. The 2 of them looked at each other. Their hesitant gazes seemed to indicate that they had made a difficult decision. This Dragonbeard Needle's amazing. Third brother, when you have time, make 2 more for me. I'll use them for self-defense in the future. Ning Rongrong's face was filled with excitement. Ever since her soul power reached rank 60, she had learned the Batwing reincarnation's hidden weapon techniques under Tang San's guidance. However, the Dragonbeard Needle was too precise, and it was a little troublesome to make. She had always practiced with stones. Now that she had personally witnessed the power of the Dragonbeard Needle, she was deeply shocked. Tang San glanced at Ning Rongrong and said, Since you have the money, why don't you just get it from the All Heavens Merchant City? Does this mean that we've won? Oscar looked at Tang San. He was also shocked by the power of the Dragonbeard Needle. It's not over yet. Tang San frowned as he looked at Li Hai and Zhou Feng, who were struggling to get up. He could feel that the aura of the two had changed. Compared to before, there was a hint of ruthlessness. Li Hai and Zhou Feng's eyes were red. Drops of blood floated around their bodies, and the veins on their faces bulged. They looked more like ferocious beasts. Roar! Both of them let out a low roar at the same time. Following that, their soul rings flickered rhythmically. Every time a soul ring fluctuated, the drops of blood on their bodies would become brighter and brighter. Zhou Feng's figure moved. He swung the scythe-like martial soul in his hand. With a whoosh, he swept towards Li Hai from behind. The moment Li Hai and Zhou Feng collided, Xiao Tong, who was assisting Li Hai, spat a mouthful of blood onto the staff in his hand. As he chanted an incantation, two demonic black lights quickly merged into the bodies of the two people in front of him. At this moment, Li Hai and Zhou Feng's bodies collided. Strangely, the two people didn't bounce off each other due to the force of the collision. Instead, their figures overlapped. Amidst the blood-red light, the two people actually became one person. Upon closer inspection, it was impossible to determine whether the two people who had merged into one looked more like Li Hai or Zhou Feng. Aren't they the geniuses that Soul Hall has painstakingly nurtured for decades? You're cutting off their escape route just like that? On the rostrum, Chu Bei glanced at the merged Li Hai and Zhou Feng, as well as Xiao Tong, who was twitching on the ground as if he had suffered a backlash. His gaze fell on Bibi Dong and he frowned. Sometimes, they have to make sacrifices for the martial Soul Hall. Bibi Dong looked at the stage with incomparable calmness. The martial Soul Hall must win this battle. But the truth is, no matter how you struggle and use all kinds of methods, you can't change the outcome of this battle. Chu Bei shook his head and sighed. He seemed to feel pity for the three people from the martial Soul Hall on the stage. This strange secret technique was similar to a blood sacrifice, but it was different from a martial soul fusion technique. It forcefully borrowed the auxiliary soul master's ability to merge the two people together. By burning their blood essence, they would obtain soul power that was several times more than the current one. Even if the two fused people won this battle, they would be the losers. Even if they didn't die, they would become cripples. You should be worried about your little guys now, right? If you don't want them to be injured or even die, let them admit defeat immediately. Bibi Dong looked at Chu Bei and said in a deep voice, "Let's wait and see." Chu Bei smiled knowingly. There was no trace of worry on his face. His gaze returned to the stage. "I want you dead." The figure formed by Li Hai and Zhou Feng slowly spat out a cold syllable. As the frightening voice that seemed to come from hell fell, the blood mist on the surface of the figure instantly spread out and enveloped the entire stage in the blink of an eye. Tang San and the others were naturally completely enveloped by this blood mist. Although this blood mist wasn't a domain, it had a miraculous effect similar to one. Whether it was Tang San, Dai Mubai, Oscar, Wang Fan, or the others, they all found that their senses, soul power, and movements were more or less suppressed. This thick blood-red mist seemed to be a mixture of evil and hallucinatory special energy. It inexplicably caused all kinds of negative emotions in people. Just as Dai Mubai and the others were panicking, Tang San's blue-silver domain erupted with a dazzling blue light. Under the blue light's envelopment, everyone's negative emotions receded, but their vision was still affected by the blood mist. This soul power undulation is stronger than mine. What? You're a rank 84 soul Dolua. If it's stronger than yours, wouldn't their combined strength reach rank 85? Or even higher? They were clearly two rank 80 soul masters before. How can their combined strength exceed that of a rank 85 soul Dolua? We can be sure that this isn't a martial soul fusion skill. It should be related to that auxiliary type soul sage. No matter what, we can be sure that the 8 little guys from All Heaven's shop are in danger now. After a soul Dolua in the spectator stands pointed out the powerful soul power released by the combined figure of Li Hai and Zhou Feng, the spectators broke out in cold sweat for Tang San and the others. They were currently facing a soul Dolua who surpassed rank 85. Boss Chu, does your disciple still have a backup plan? Why don't we give the championship to those lunatics from the Martial Soul Hall? Strictly speaking, if they hadn't used such a ruthless method, they would have already lost. On the main stage, Ning Fengji looked at Chu Bei and tried to persuade him. With his strength, he could naturally see how terrifyingly high and Zhou Feng's combined strength was. He couldn't think of how the 8 little guys from All Heaven's shop could defeat a rank 85 Sol de Lua. The main reason why he was so anxious was because his precious daughter was also inside. The battlefield has been handed over to them. Let's just watch. Chu Bei waved his hand at Ning Fengji, indicating that he shouldn't be so nervous. On the stage, Li Hai and Zhou Feng's combined figure continued to shrink, but the blood mist around their bodies became more and more solid. Azura storm. At some point, a strange weapon made of a blue blade and a sickle had appeared in the combined figure's hand. As his cold shout filled with killing intent rang out, the blood around him surged madly towards the strange weapon in his hand. Whoosh! A blood-red blade of light shot out from the blade of the strange weapon, and a huge blood-red tornado vortex followed closely behind it. Retreat! Tang San exclaimed when he sensed the terrifying aura from the blade. His figure flashed, and he condensed a huge blue-silver grass shield to meet the blade. Whoosh! This time, the blue-silver grass shield tablet was instantly sliced apart. Fortunately, the blood blade that carried a sharp aura also dissipated. However, even though the blue-silver grass shield tablet had successfully blocked the blood blade, the tornado that followed the blood blade was still heading towards Tang San, Dai Mubai, and the others. As Dai Mubai, Oscar, and the others had already retreated, they were only sent flying by the edge of the whirlpool. However, Xiao Wu, who was the last to retreat, was struck by the whirlpool's energy and flipped in the air. During this process, a blooming flower silently fell from her arms. Seeing the yearning heartbroken red flying out of the merchant city, Xiao Wu's face suddenly changed. She quickly reached out to grab the yearning heartbroken red and stuffed it back into her clothes. She is, however, in this short period of time, other than Chu Bei and Ning Fengji, the 5 pairs of eyes on the main stage all landed on Xiao Wu. Their eyes were filled with astonishment, and their faces were filled with astonishment. Chapter 238. It wasn't just the 5 people on the main stage. The few titled Dolua in the VIP stands were also shocked when the yearning heartbroken grass left Xiao Wu's body. Bibi Dong's expression changed the most. Other than being shocked, he was actually a little excited. On the stage, Xiao Wu could clearly feel the pressure from the titled Dolua, and a panicked look appeared on her face. However, when he met Chu Bei's smiling gaze, a warm current inexplicably rose in his heart, and the fear on his face instantly dissipated. Bibi Dong glanced at Xiao Wu again, then turned to look at the VIP stands. In the VIP stands, 2 white-haired elders seemed to understand the meaning in Bibi Dong's eyes, and nodded slightly. Lightning break. On the stage, Tang San stabilized himself and waved the clear sky hammer in his hand. Under the chaotic splitting wind hammer technique, his second 100,000-year soul ring lit up. In the next moment, amidst the rumbling, the hammer's body suddenly expanded, wrapped in a huge circle of blue light, and smashed towards the armor. Within the blue light, purplish-black lightning intertwined and turned into a deep-sea shark. Frenzied nightmare. Li Hai and Zhou Feng glanced at Tang San with disdain. Facing the clear sky hammer, they didn't dodge at all. Instead, they held their weapons with both hands and slashed them down. Boom! Tang San was sent flying again. If he hadn't formed a blue-silver grass shield tablet in time, he would have been seriously injured. The aftermath of the collision directly cut open a deep ravine on the fighting stage. Brother San, you're not his match now. Let's use a combination skill too. Xiao Wu glanced at the 2 people who had combined and gritted her teeth as she looked at Tang San. Tang San didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at the other 6 people. When he saw Dai Mubai, Zhu Zhuqing and the others nod, Tang San's figure flashed and flew to the center of the 7 people. Light of the Sea God. When Tang San was in the center of the 7 people, the 8 of them shouted at the same time. On the stage, Tang San was in the center of the 8 people from the All Heaven's shop, while the other 7 people were scattered around him in a circle. When they shouted in unison, a blue beam of light rose from the 8 of them. Within the beam of light, Specks of blue light filled the air, and one could vaguely see water droplets floating and flowing. Within the blue beam of light, more and more water droplets gathered and began to form tiny streams of water. The shadows of seaweed, corals, and reefs were vaguely reflected in the water. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Seawater is coming out of the 8 little guys' bodies. Sea God. Light of the sea god. Is the sea god they're talking about the overlord of the ocean? In the stands, a crowd of spectators crowded around the railing, staring intently at the 8 people of all heaven's shop and the blue beams of light surrounding them. Whoosh! At this moment, the sound of water could be heard. Under everyone's gazes, the blue light beams on Dai Mubai, Zhu Zhuqing, Xiao Wu, and the rest converged towards Tang San's light beam. Gradually, Tang San's soul force undulations started to rise by leaps and bounds. Furthermore, there seemed to be an additional indescribable aura within his soul force. This power felt like it was surging endlessly. When they looked at Dai Mubai and the rest, their soul force undulations were the exact opposite of Tang San's. They were rapidly decreasing, and their vigorous auras were gradually weakening. What are the two of you still hesitating for? Suddenly, Bibi Dong's cold voice rang out in the air. From Bibi Dong's furious expression, it was clear that she had sensed an unstable factor from Tang San's body. Hearing Bibi Dong's shout, the combined Li Hai and Zhou Feng's eyes turned even redder. They appeared above Tang San and the rest in an instant, and the strange weapon in their hands that glowed with blood-red light slashed down viciously. Boom! However, just as the strange weapon struck the blue beam of light around Tang San's body, a terrifying recoil forced the combined Li Hai and Zhou Feng back. Even the strange weapon in their hands almost fell out of their hands. This power is enough. Leave the rest to me. Tang San looked at the pale-faced Xiao Wu and the rest. After speaking gently, he slowly flew towards Li Hai and Zhou Feng. Tang San's clear sky hammer appeared in his hands once again. However, as the distance between him and Li Hai and Zhou Feng shortened, the clear sky hammer became bigger and bigger until it was larger than his entire body. Under everyone's gaze, the surface of the clear sky hammer, which was originally releasing black light, was now covered with a layer of blue light. There were water snakes swimming within the blue light. This blue light was formed by the power of the light of the sea god from the 8 of them. In midair, Tang San slowly raised the clear sky hammer, and the huge patterns on the hammer's body suddenly exploded. The bright blue light seeped with a pale green color, and the black light could be faintly seen under the pale green color. At this moment, there seemed to be an extremely powerful voice roaring crazily from the clear sky hammer. Tang San himself seemed to have become the hammer's handle, and his entire body seemed to have become one with the clear sky hammer. That energy undulation, after sensing the energy undulations from the clear sky hammer, Bibi Dong couldn't sit still anymore. She stared at Tang San in shock. What shocked her wasn't Tang San's soul power undulations that weren't weaker than a rank 85 soul de luas, but the foreign aura that wasn't inferior to Rakshas's. Did he really inherit the sea god's power? As she thought until here, Bibi Dong's expression turned even uglier. No one knew how terrifying a god's power was more than she did. Bibi Dong glanced at Chu Bei. The All-Heaven shop already had a demigod. She wouldn't allow a second demigod, or even a true god, to grow. This 6-year-old kid's talent was too terrifying. It was so terrifying that it made her heart palpitate. In the air above the arena, Tang San's immense soul power started to form a strange cycle with the clear sky hammer. At this moment, Tang San's body was also covered with a layer of pale blue light. His aura was no longer different from the clear sky hammer's. Fight! The fusion of Li Hai and Zhou Feng stared at Tang San with their blood-red eyes. They raised the weird weapon in their hands and released a demonic red light. As the blood in their bodies evaporated, the red light on the weapon surged until it completely enveloped their bodies. At this moment, the two of them merged into one with the strange weapon. Azura's descent. A roar reverberated in the air. A huge, reddish-black shadow appeared behind the fusion of the two. In the next moment, their bodies slashed towards Tang San along with the weird weapon. Sea God's hammer. Tang San took a step forward. As his voice sounded, a huge figure also appeared behind him. Compared to the fusion of Li Hai and Zhou Feng, the figure behind Tang San was much more solid. One could even see the figure's appearance clearly. A monstrous aura surged from the clear sky hammer. The blue light that represented the sea spread with pale green light. In an instant, the two figures intersected. Boom! Amidst an earth-shattering sound, the 6 people from the martial soul hall, who were almost zombie-like, were thrown off the arena. They crashed into the ground, creating deep craters. Perhaps it was because of Tang San's protection. Dai Mubai, Xiao Wu, and the other 6 people were not affected by the aftermath of the collision. Their eyes were locked onto the 2 figures above. Not only the disciples of the martial soul hall, but everyone in the stands, the VIP seats, and the rostrum had their eyes fixed on the 2 figures that collided in the air above the arena. Boom! Another ear-splitting sound was heard. The stalemate between the 2 figures was broken by the clear sky hammer that emitted a blue light again. Under the clear sky hammer, the huge shadow behind the fusion of Li Hai and Zhou Feng dissipated. The weird weapon also shattered. With a puff, the fusion of the 2, who were already skin and bones, spat out blood. Their bodies shot out of the arena like a kite with a broken string. With a crisp cracking sound, the arena made of marble broke into 2 halves due to the huge impact of the fusion of Li Hai and Zhou Feng. The fusion of Li Hai and Zhou Feng's figures penetrated into the crack of the arena. At the edge of the crack, a pool of red blood could be clearly seen. The pungent smell of blood was nauseating. "Brother San, are you okay?" The members of the All Heaven shop didn't have time to check on the fusion of Li Hai and Zhou Feng. They looked at Tang San with worried expressions. "I'm fine." He couldn't take the sea god's hammer. Tang San withdrew his clear sky hammer and slowly descended beside Xiao Wu. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. "On the other hand, the 2 of you have exhausted too much of your soul power to transfer to me. Hee. After eating Oscar's sausage, I've recovered a lot." Dai Mubai smiled and put a hand on Tang San's shoulder. While Tang San and the others were worrying about each other, the MC had already brought Li Hai and Zhou Feng out of the crack. At this moment, the 2 figures had already separated. Their eyes were white, and there was no sign of life on their bodies. Their bodies were like dried corpses that had been sucked dry of blood. The MC took a deep breath and glanced at Tang San with fear. He couldn't help but shudder when he thought of Tang San's hammer. If it was him who took the hammer, he would probably end up like the 2 men from the Martial Spirit Palace, dead and gone. After calming himself down, the MC cleared his throat. The championship match, the All Heaven Shop versus the Martial Soul Hall. The All Heaven Shop wins. I hereby announce that the champion of this year's Elite Soul Master Tournament is the All Heaven Shop. The more the MC spoke, the more excited he became. When the last syllable fell, his entire body trembled. It was as if this sentence had sucked out all the soul power in his body. The atmosphere in the arena was boiling. When the MC announced the results of the tournament, the cheers in the arena reached the highest level since the start of the tournament. They won. The 8 kids from the All Heaven Shop really won the championship. Rank 85. That kid called Tang San actually defeated the Martial Soul Hall team that surpassed a rank 85 Soul Delua. What kind of power did the other 7 from the All Heaven Shop gather on him? Was it really the Sea God's power? This year's Elite Soul Master Tournament is the most exciting one I've seen in many years. Who would have thought that he would end the Martial Soul Hall's consecutive championships with a bunch of kids? This Boss Chu is really something. Not only is his strength standing at the peak of the continent, but the kids he trained are also terrifying. In the beginning, who would have thought that the All Heaven Shop would really win the championship? Now that I think about it, it's really a little ironic. We thought that Boss Chu was joking, but we didn't know that he was really strong. Excited voices, screams, and shouts intertwined in the air above the arena. The spectators were all excited, and their faces were flushed. If it weren't for Boss Chu's identity, they would have jumped onto the arena and kissed the 8 powerful and cute kids crazily. After system evaluation, the reputation of the All Heaven Shop has reached 95. Rank 11 Commodity Authority unlocked. As the crowd clamored, Chu Bei heard the system's voice in his mind and let out a long sigh. Rank 11 authority, finally unlocked. His path of cultivation could continue moving forward. The mission of this Dolua trip was complete. After calming his excited heart, Chu Bei stood up and straightened his clothes. He leisurely walked to Bibi Dong's side and smiled. Did the ending change? Sometimes. The so-called ending is already destined from the beginning. No matter how you struggle, you can't change it. Chu Bei patted Bibi Dong's shoulder and faintly sighed. It's a pity that all 8 of your martial spirit hall's hidden aces were annihilated. The last 2 of them even had experience in the City of Slaughter. In the last battle, a massive phantom had appeared behind the 2 of them. This was the power of the Azura god. Unfortunately, they didn't succeed in passing through the Azura road and obtaining the inheritance. Boss Chu, congratulations. The All Heaven shop has only been established for a few days, and you've actually won this year's Top Soul Master Tournament in one fell swoop. Presumably, this year's battle will be known even thousands of years from now. The Snowy Knight Emperor stood up from his chair and cupped his fists towards Chu Bei. This is unbelievable. My mischievous baby daughter is actually a member of this year's Top Soul Master Tournament's champion team. Ning Fengji's face was filled with joy. After a moment of excitement, he seemed to remember something. He immediately turned to Chu Bei and asked, Boss Chu, what is Rongrong's final strength? The power of the sea god. Chu Bei lightly said, What? It really is the power of a god. After confirming his conjecture, Ning Fengji took a deep breath and bowed deeply towards Chu Bei again. Thank you, Boss Chu, for giving my daughter this opportunity. Sect Master Ning, there is no need to be polite. Since Rongrong is my disciple, I will naturally give her the best. Chu Bei smiled. Seeing Chu Bei and Ning Fengji chatting happily, Bibi Dong's face turned gloomy. He tilted his head and nodded towards the 2 old men in the VIP seats. In the next moment, under everyone's gaze, 2 streaks of light flew out from the VIP seats and towards the stage. Capture that girl and immediately return to the Martial Spirit Hall. At this moment, Bibi Dong's dignified voice drifted through the air. The VIP seats were 100 meters away from the stage, but for a titled Dolua, this distance could be covered in the blink of an eye. Before the people in the stands could understand what was going on, 2 white-haired old men had already appeared above the stage. Chapter 239. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to take revenge for the 8 of them? According to the rules of the tournament, life and death on the stage is up to fate. Sensing the terrifying aura of the 2 white-haired elders, Tang San immediately shielded Xiao Wu, Ning Rongrong, and the others behind him. At the same time, he raised his clear sky hammer. Boss, do something. Someone is trying to kill your precious agent. Ning Rongrong raised her voice and roared in the direction of the rostrum. Her roar was filled with fear. Scram if you don't want to die. Our target is the 100,000-year soul beast behind you. The 2 white-haired elders pointed at Xiao Wu and shouted angrily. 100,000-year soul beast? The 7 people, including Tang San, trembled when they heard the elders' words. Their gazes were fixed on Xiao Wu at the same time. I didn't mean to hide it from you. I'm actually a 100,000-year soul beast, the soft bone rabbit. Whether you're a human or a beast, you're a comrade of the All Heaven shop. You're our family. With me here, no one can hurt you. Tang San's wisdom was far superior to the other 6. While Dai Mubai, Zhu Zhuqing, and the others were still in shock, he had already pulled Xiao Wu to his side and protected her behind him. Hearing Tang San's words, Dai Mubai, Oscar, and the others reacted almost at the same time. They surrounded Xiao Wu and their soul rings lit up at the same time, preparing to receive the attacks of the 2 white-haired elders. A bunch of people who overestimate themselves. Do you really think you're invincible after becoming the champion of the Soul Master Tournament? After a mocking voice sounded, one of the 2 white-haired elders slammed his right palm down from the sky. Did you hear what the old man from the Martial Soul Hall said? A 100,000-year soul beast. The little girl from the All Heaven shop is a 100,000-year soul beast. Is that true? A 100,000-year soul beast is at least as strong as a titled Dolua, but the strength she just displayed is only equivalent to a soul elder. This involves the secret of soul beasts. When they cultivate to 100,000 years, they'll hit a bottleneck. If they want to take another step, they can only transform into a human and cultivate again to break through to rank 100 to become a god. Even if she's really a 100,000-year soul beast, she's still Boss Chu's woman. The Martial Soul Hall's people are attacking her so brazenly. Aren't they afraid of Boss Chu's revenge? Everyone's attention was on Xiao Wu. They could sense the auras of the two titled Dolua, and their hearts were in their throats. Neptune's hammer. Looking at the huge palm print falling from the sky, Tang San held the clear sky hammer and soared into the sky. Boom! The hammer that could defeat a rank 85 soul Dolua was so weak in front of a titled Dolua. Tang San was instantly smashed into the marble by the titled Dolua. Fortunately, he managed to purchase several defensive items from the All-Heaven shop in time, so he wasn't injured at all. Xiao Wu, watch out. However, the titled Dolua unleashed another attack, and Tang San couldn't block it in time. Boss Chu, aren't you going to make a move? Ning Fengji asked worriedly as he looked at Chu Bei, who was still calm and composed. Chu Bei smiled and shook his head with a mysterious expression. Someone will make a move? Who? The Snowy Night Emperor, the White Tiger Emperor, Yu Tianhao, Ning Fengji, and even Bibi Dong were astonished. Could there be someone in the All-Heaven shop who could stop two titled Dolua? Just as confusion appeared in the eyes of the group of people on the main platform, a sudden clap of thunder exploded in the sky above the fighting stage, and a figure appeared out of thin air. Rank 80 Soul Sage, Neptune's Inheritance, 100,000-year Soul Ring, Blue-Silver Domain, and an external soul bone. Sanner, I'm proud of you. If Ayn was still here, she would be proud of you too. In the next moment, a hearty laughter drifted through the air. Third and fourth of the Dolua Palace, it's great that the two of you are still alive. The laughter faded away, and the figure's voice suddenly became deep. His voice was filled with killing intent as it exploded in the air. The domineering aura contained in the vigorous voice caused everyone's body to tremble uncontrollably. After he shouted, the figure took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of Xiao Wu. He punched out towards the two white-haired elders from the Martial Soul Hall. When he heard the familiar voice, Tang San suddenly lifted his head. His eyes were filled with surprise. On the main stage, Bibi Dong's expression turned ugly at this moment. As for Ning Fengji, the Snowy Night Emperor, the White Tiger Emperor, and Yu Tianhao, they were first stunned when they saw the figure. Chu Bei placed his hands behind his back. There was a faint smile on his face. He had already sensed the other party when he arrived in the arena. Amidst the low explosion, the two white-haired elders from the Martial Soul Hall were sent flying back like cannonballs. F***CK, who is this ruthless person? He actually knocked back two titled Dolua with one punch. Is the Sanner he's talking about Tang San? Is he Tang San's relative? In my opinion, he must be from the All-Heaven shop. I don't know why, but I feel that this person is familiar. It's like I've seen him somewhere before, but I can't remember where. On the spectator's stand, everyone's astonished gazes were focused on the figure that had suddenly appeared. They were all trying to guess his background. The black figure hovered in mid-air. There were no soul power undulations from his body. If not for the fact that he had knocked back two titled Dolua with one punch, they would have thought that he was an ordinary person. This was a middle-aged man. He looked to be around 50 years old. He was tall and burly, but his attire made people gasp. His robes, which were supposed to be exquisite, were filled with holes. There weren't even any patches. Through the holes, one could see his bronze-colored skin. There were even some scars on some parts of his body. His hair was as messy as a bird's nest, and there were even some cobwebs. His beard hadn't been tidied up for a long time. Fortunately, his facial features and smiling eyes gave people a feeling that he was very energetic. Father, father. Tang San's eyes turned red as he looked at the tall figure in the air. Tears finally flowed out of his eyes. He struggled to say those two words. In the depths of his mind, the scenes that the Blue-Silver King had awakened for him surfaced again. Combining those scenes with the things that Chu Bei had revealed from time to time, He had already guessed it. It was also because he had guessed it that when he saw this figure again, he recalled the decadent life that Tang San had led all these years. His heart suddenly ached. That's right. This tall figure that had appeared out of nowhere in midair was Tang San's father, the blacksmith from the Holy Spirit village, Tang Hao. Compared to a few days ago, Tang Hao's hair was much more white now. However, his energy was much better than before. Behind him, an enormous black hammer floated in midair. Tang Hao, you finally appeared. I thought that you would hide for the rest of your life. I really didn't expect this little demon to be your son. The two white-haired elders from the martial spirit hall stabilized themselves in midair. After seeing the figure's appearance, they shouted. Their eyes were filled with hatred, as if they were about to spit fire. Tang Hao, what a familiar name. What? He's Tang Hao, the Clear Sky sect's youngest titled Dolua, Tang Hao. No wonder I found him familiar. He was the most powerful person in the younger generation back then. However, I don't know what happened. He suddenly disappeared, and his name that once shook the continent was gradually forgotten. Since he disappeared for so many years, why did he come out again today? What exactly happened between him and the Martial Spirit Hall? So that demon called Tang San is his son. Hearing the yelling of the two elders of the Martial Spirit Hall, several people in the VIP seats recognized Tang Hao. They were extremely shocked. Yes, I've hidden for too long. It's time to collect my debt. Tang Hao looked coldly at the two elders of the Yin and Yang sects. 100 Ghosts, Nightwalker, and Qian Sun are all dead. Only the two of you are left. I guess you haven't recovered from your old illness back then? The two white-haired elders sneered. As they shouted, 9 soul rings lit up on their bodies at the same time. One of them had a crescent-shaped soul ring that released a pure white light, like the moon. The other person's soul ring was spherical and released a dazzling golden light. It was like a miniature sun. Boss Chu, I guess you already knew that Tang Hao was here? Ning Fengji asked as he looked at Chu Bei. Tang Hao was from the same generation as him. Back then, Tang Hao was more dazzling than anyone in the same generation. Chu Bei glanced at Ning Fengji and returned to his seat. He smiled but didn't say anything. From his disorder-splitting wind hammer technique, I can confirm that he's from the Clear Sky sect. However, I didn't expect him to be Tang Hao's son. Yu Tianhao sighed. Has the All-Heaven shop teamed up with the Clear Sky sect? Bibi Dong narrowed his eyes as he looked at Chu Bei. What's the purpose of teaming up? To deal with the Martial Spirit Hall? Chu Bei looked at Bibi Dong playfully and mocked. Do you think I would need the Clear Sky sect's help if I wanted to deal with the Martial Spirit Hall? You're too confident. Bibi Dong snorted. When your husband was injured by Tang Hao, don't you want to avenge him? Chu Bei asked. Are you talking about Qinshu and Ji? Avenge him? What a joke. Bibi Dong's face was gloomy. He pointed at Tang Hao and said coldly, I do want to kill him, but not to avenge Qinshu and Ji. I'm just worried that he and Tang San will threaten the Martial Spirit Hall. In the air above the stage, the Yin and Yang reverends of the Martial Spirit Hall surged with soul power. Yin-Yang fusion. The two white-haired old men shouted at the same time. Then, their palms faced each other and their martial spirits fused. In an instant, a huge Tai Chi illusion appeared in front of the Yin and Yang reverends. Their martial spirits each occupied a Tai Chi eye. Under the dazzling golden light, the two reverends of Yin and Yang pushed the Tai Chi shadow toward Tang Hao. Wherever it passed, the void buzzed, and pitch-black cracks spread. Unlike the forced combination of Li Hai and Zhou Feng, the two white-haired old men's attack was a true martial soul fusion technique. Chapter 240. Is this the yin-yang fusion of the Dolua Palace's third and fourth consecrators? Just this aura alone is worthy of its reputation. According to what I know, the Martial Spirit Hall and the Dolua Palace have a total of 2 pairs of titled Dolua who know martial soul fusion skills. The pitiful thing is that one of the pairs, the Ghost Dolua and the Chrysanthemum Dolua, was killed by Boss Chu. The yin-yang consecrators are the second pair, and their martial soul fusion skills are even more powerful than the Ghost Dolua and Chrysanthemum Dolua. I heard that when the yin-yang fusion skill is used, even Pope Bibi Dong can only avoid it. I can't figure out what kind of enmity the yin-yang consecrators have with Tang Hao. They actually used their strongest martial soul fusion skill right from the start. In the VIP seats, the experts above the Soul Delua level stared at the Tai Chi image in front of the yin-yang consecrators. On the stage, Dai Mubai, Zhu Zhuqing, Xiao Wu, and the others looked at the Tai Chi image above their heads in astonishment. They realized that their bodies were actually imprisoned, and they couldn't circulate the soul power in their bodies. Although they were shocked by the yin-yang consecrators' martial soul fusion skill, they didn't panic. One reason was because the tall figure above their heads gave them a sense of security, and the other reason was that the boss they defeated was looking at them from the main stage. Ian, Tang Hao whispered softly. In the next moment, Tang Hao raised his head and looked at the Tai Chi image that was as terrifying as a mountain, and his eyes shone brightly. Finally, I can kill you with my own hands. Tang Hao didn't seem to be affected by the Tai Chi image. He stood proudly and waved his tattered sleeve. A unique aura seeped out of his body, as if even if there were thousands of soldiers and horses in front of him, he wouldn't care. Under everyone's gaze, soul rings slowly rose from his feet one after another. The soul rings didn't rise quickly, but with the appearance of each soul ring, Tang Hao's soul power fluctuations became more and more tyrannical. In the end, even the aura of the Tai Chi image was suppressed. Yellow, yellow, purple, purple, black, 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 red. He also had 9 soul rings, but the last soul ring was 100,000-year soul. I didn't expect Xiao to be his son. Yu Xiaojing stood up from his chair. He had always been arrogant, but when he looked at Tang Hao, who was hovering above the stage, there was only respect in his eyes. In the entire world of Soul Masters, Tang Hao was his only idol before Boss Chu appeared. San, Father will let you see the true heavenly body. Tang Hao glanced at Tang San below and said indifferently. As his dignified voice sounded, Tang Hao's 7th soul ring lit up. The enormous black clear sky hammer that was floating behind his back suddenly blossomed, and intense black light surged and surged. The gigantic clear sky hammer unfurled in the wind, its size reaching 100 meters. The huge hammer was like a small mountain. Streaks of red lines extended from the handle to the surface of the hammer. As Tang Hao's 100,000-year red soul ring lit up, the black hammer instantly turned completely red. Die! Tang Hao spat out a cold syllable filled with monstrous killing intent. Both of his hands moved and hugged a corner of the hammer's handle. Then, with a half-turn of his body, he exerted force from his waist and smashed the 100-meter-long super hammer toward the yin and yang reverends. The moment the giant hammer was swung, the air in the entire plaza became distorted. In the spectator stands closest to the stage, all soul masters below the Soul Emperor level were unable to move at all. Tang Hao, stop! A thunderous sound suddenly came from the distant sky. The rolling thunder carried a strong killing intent. This is the voice of Head Reverend Xian Daolu. Why is he back again? Hearing his voice before seeing him, this familiar thunderous sound came from the mouth of Head Reverend Xian Daolu, who had left earlier. Tang Hao. On the main stage, Bibi Dong looked at Tang Hao somewhat dejectedly. Although she also had 100,000-year soul ring, and her soul power was not weaker than the other parties, in terms of aura, she realized that she was far inferior to this famous heavenly Delua. What made her even more surprised was that she actually felt a similar aura from the other party's body. This was once the number 1 person of the younger generation. Just like her, he had also walked through the path to hell from the city of massacre and successfully came out alive. As for the yin and yang reverends, the moment Tang Hao took out the clear sky hammer, their expressions suddenly changed. No matter what, they would never have thought that the soul power of the former Tang Hao had already reached such a level. The aura emitted by the clear sky hammer made their hearts palpitate. They wanted to retreat, but the clear sky hammer seemed to have locked onto them and had the same sealing ability as their yin-yang fusion. They had no way out and could only frantically pour their soul power into the yin-yang fusion. The Taiji Phantom gradually became more and more condensed, and its aura became more and more vigorous. Tang Hao, how dare you? In the distance, Daolia's low voice sounded out again, mixed with monstrous anger. You can't stop it anymore. Tang Hao suddenly threw his head back and laughed loudly, as if he was crazy. If the two of them don't die, how can I face Ian? Amidst Tang Hao's loud laughter, the 100-meter-long clear sky hammer smashed towards the Taiji phantom. Boom! Amidst the deafening sound, a terrifying demonic black light suddenly bloomed. In an instant, the originally blue sky became dark. Under the enormous clear sky hammer, the Yin and Yang consecrator's martial soul fusion skill, Yin-Yang fusion, only lasted for 3 seconds before shattering, turning into ripples and dissipating. Immediately after, the pupils of the Yin and Yang consecrators rapidly constricted as the enormous clear sky hammer ruthlessly smashed into their bodies. In the sky, the Yin and Yang consecrators didn't even have time to let out a scream before they were smashed into meat paste by the clear sky hammer, and blood splattered everywhere. In an instant, the air was deathly silent. Tang Hao put away the enormous clear sky hammer, and his body stood quietly in the air like a demon king, his might intimidating. Ian, did you see that? The remaining two are already dead. Looking at the flesh and blood not far away, Tang Hao laughed maniacally, laughing very happily. Then, his body suddenly took a step back, and his face instantly turned pale. As he staggered, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Obviously, the terrifying aftershock from the collision just now had affected his hidden injuries. Is this the strength of the Hao? Hao Tiandolu, the Yin and Yang consecrators of the martial spirit hall, actually died just like that. Didn't they say that under their martial soul fusion skill, even the Pope, Bibi Dong, had to avoid it? Could it be that Tang Hao's strength is above Bibi Dong's? I thought that after disappearing for so many years, his soul power would stagnate. I didn't expect that not only did it not stagnate, it actually surpassed us by far. As expected of the former number 1 person, even now, he's still the strongest among his peers. He's still the famous Hao Tiandolu. With him returning to the world in such a high-profile manner, does it mean that the Clear Sky sect, which has been in seclusion for so many years, will also re-enter our sights? In the VIP seats, in the spectator stands, everyone looked at the Yin and Yang consecrators who had been smashed into meat paste. Their minds were completely blank, and only astonishment was left in their words. After so many years, he's still the former number 1 person. On the main stage, Yu Tianhao and Ning Fengji looked at each other. They glanced at the imposing figure in the sky not far away, and a strange look flashed across their eyes, but it was more of reminiscence. On the fighting stage, Dai Mubai, Zhu Zhuqing, and the others' faces were filled with astonishment, and they all subconsciously swallowed their saliva. Third brother's father is so strong. Ning Rongrong took a deep breath and suddenly exclaimed as she pinched the corner of her clothes. Among the 7 people in the All Heavens shop, she originally thought that her background was the most terrifying, and her father was the strongest. But today, her original thoughts had really changed. First, her sister Xiao Wu had transformed into a 100,000-year soul beast, and now, Tang San's father had appeared. He had killed 2 titled Delua from the martial spirit hall with his own strength, and it was even under the condition that the other party had used a martial soul fusion skill. She was very sure that her father couldn't do it, her grandpa Gu couldn't do it, and her grandpa Jian couldn't do it either. Looking at the tall figure in the sky, Tang San let out a long breath, and there was a hint of confusion in his eyes. This figure was so familiar, but it gave him a strange feeling at this moment. Over the past few days, he had also guessed Tang Hao's relationship with the Clear Sky sect, especially when he found out that Tang Hao had taught him the chaotic splitting wind hammer technique, which only the direct disciples of the Clear Sky sect could learn. He even thought that his father was a powerful soul master. But even though he had guessed it, he didn't expect Tang Hao to be so strong. In terms of aura alone, among all the people he had seen, only his boss and the sea god were above his father. Even against Bo Saishi and the King of Massacre, who were both peak-stage Dolua, his father's aura wasn't inferior. San I know you have a lot of questions to ask me. Once the problem is solved, I'll answer you one by one. Tang Hao lowered his head to look at Tang San, and after smiling, he turned his head to look to the east. Tang Hao, you killed my son, Qin Xuanji, and today, you killed Yin Yang. Even if I kill you 10,000 times, it won't be enough to appease the hatred in my heart. The thunderous voice was filled with hatred, but this time, it was accompanied by a streak of dazzling golden light. Today, not only will I kill you, but I'll also kill your son. I'll make you and your father repent to my son. As the golden light flashed, Qian Lu's figure appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Compared to before he left, Thousand Dao Flo's clothes had undergone an earth-shaking change. At this moment, he was no longer wearing a golden palace robe. Instead, his entire body was covered in a layer of armor that seemed to be piled up with gold. There were 6 parts in the armor, which corresponded to the head, chest, waist, hands, legs, and feet. Even though the 6 pieces of golden armor didn't have many decorative patterns, they fit together perfectly and gave off a natural feeling. The most eye-catching part of it was the 3 pairs of 6 wings on its back. Unlike the light figure before, the wings were made of flesh and were truly a part of his body. Chapter 241. So he went back to get the angel set. On the rostrum, Chu Bei glanced at Thousand Streams and could not help but smile. At this moment, Thousand Streams stood in the air without any soul power fluctuations. At first glance, he looked like an ordinary person. However, the pair of golden eyes that looked at Tang Hao were filled with a chilling, killing intent. If one looked carefully, they would be able to see that there was a 6-winged angel brand between Thousand Streams' brows. Tang Hao killed Qin Xuanji? So the previous martial spirit hall pontiff was killed by Tang Hao. No wonder Thousand Streams is so angry. So he wants to take revenge for his son. Is this the reason why Tang Hao disappeared and the Clear Sky sect went into hiding? But what I don't understand is why Tang Hao killed Qin Xuanji. From what Tang Hao said earlier, he seems to be taking revenge for someone called I. There are a total of 5 people, and the Yin and Yang consecrators are the last 2. Ayan? Could it be his wife? Then Tang San's mother? When the people in the spectator stands heard Thousand Streams' words, their eyes were filled with surprise, and the confusion on their faces became even more obvious. As for the VIP seats and the rostrum, those who knew the details remained silent. They quietly cast their gazes on Thousand Streams and Tang Hao. Boss Chu, there will definitely be a battle between Tang Hao and the Thousand Streams. Will you intervene? Ning Fengji looked at Chu Bei and couldn't help but ask when he sensed the strange atmosphere in the air above the combat arena that was ready for a showdown. At this moment, Thousand Streams and Tang Hao looked at each other. They looked calm, but everyone present knew that this was the calm before the storm. This is a battle between the 2 of them. Chu Bei stood up and crossed his arms in front of his chest. As for whether or not I'll interfere, we'll see. I thought you'd choose to kill yourself. Thousand Streams clenched his golden fists and flapped his golden wings. He suppressed his monstrous anger and said calmly, "Do you still want to fight with me?" Of course. Tang Hao looked at Thousand Streams with a smile. There was no fear on his face as he said calmly, "You think you can get away with it?" Thousand Streams asked, "With your strength, you should be able to tell that my current strength has already surpassed that of a demigod. I am only a step away from becoming a true god. Right? God." When Tang Hao heard Thousand Streams call him that, he subconsciously glanced at Chu Bei, who was on the rostrum. Then, his gaze once again returned to Thousand Streams. "So what? What's more, you're not a real god." An emotionless voice drifted through the air. Tang Hao's right foot lightly stomped the air, and circles of red light immediately spread out with his body as the center. At the same time, his 9 soul rings lit up once more. Death God domain? Unfortunately, it's just a domain. Qian Daolu glanced at the red light around his body with disdain. He flapped his 6 wings, and the red light around him dissipated. However, just when everyone thought that Thousand Streams also had 9 soul rings, another soul ring lit up on his body. It was his 10th soul ring. To be precise, it should be his 9th half soul ring. This soul ring was not completely formed. It was only half formed. This was an incomplete golden soul ring. It looked like it was woven from golden angel feathers. Although only half of the golden soul ring was formed, its size was still far larger than the other 9 soul rings. For this reason, it was not distributed above the other 9 soul rings. Instead, it hung alone behind 1,000 streams. He actually has a golden soul ring. Ning Fengji, Yu Tianhao, the Snowy Night Emperor, and the White Tiger Emperor looked at Chu Bei at the same time when they saw the incomplete golden soul ring behind 1,000 streams. 100,000-year soul beast's soul ring is red. However, if your soul power can break through from rank 99 to rank 100, which is also known as rank 100 godhood, your 10th soul ring will appear. This 10th soul ring is golden, and it can also be called a divine ring. As for 1,000 streams, with the help of the angel set, he can barely be considered a quasi-god. However, he is still a step away from becoming a true god. At this point, Chu Bei's gaze swept across Ning Fengji and the others. He continued, "This is also why his 10th soul ring is only half complete. What about you? Are you only one step away from becoming a true god? Have you already become a demigod? Or even a quasi-god between a demigod and a true god like 1,000 streams?" Bibi Dong glanced at the 1,000 das flow. After a wave of emotions surged in his heart, his gaze landed on Chu Bei as he asked coldly. Chu Bei glanced at Bibi Dong. He only smiled and did not answer the other party's question. At the same time, in the sky above the arena, Tang Hao took a step forward, and flames rose from his body. The strange thing was that the purple, black, and red colors that represented the soul beast's cultivation time had all disappeared. They had all turned into a dazzling white color. Almost at the same time, Tang Hao's body was also enveloped by a bright white light. The gigantic clear sky hammer, which was emitting a frightening black light, appeared in his hand once again. Very good. Let this old man see just how powerful the martial spirit of the number 1 sect in the world, the clear sky hammer that once heavily injured my son and killed him. 1,000 Dao Lu stared coldly at the clear sky hammer in Tang Hao's hand and clenched his fists slightly. You won't be disappointed. Tang Hao's figure moved. His body, which was wrapped in a bright white light, rushed towards 1,000 streams like an arrow. He did not use any soul skills during the process. 1,000 streams seemed to not understand why Tang Hao was charging over. The 6 wings on his back flapped slightly and he frowned slightly. Boom. Just as 1,000 streams was puzzled, Tang Hao's figure had already appeared in front of 1,000 streams. At the same time, as the white light flickered, his first soul ring exploded. In the next moment, Tang Hao raised his right fist and punched towards 1,000 streams. 1,000 streams did not think too much. A black soul ring lit up on his body, and he clenched his fist and punched out. With a boom, black and white flames soared into the sky. Tang Hao's body flew backward, but the quasi-god level 1,000 streams body actually paused for a moment in the air. His body, which contained a huge amount of soul power, actually trembled. This power, how is it possible? 1,000 streams' eyes widened as he looked at Tang Hao, who was flying backward. He did not understand how his opponent did it. The pure soul power of his opponent's punch was comparable to that of a rank 99 peak Dalua. However, Tang Hao did not explain to 1,000 streams. When he stabilized his body, his second and third soul rings exploded at the same time. Following that, his figure flashed, and he rushed towards 1,000 streams again. Is this a secret technique of the Clear Sky sect? 1,000 streams narrowed his eyes. Just as his opponent's second and third soul rings exploded, his opponent's soul power undulations suddenly rose by a huge level. Compared to when his first soul ring exploded, Tang Hao's eyes had turned completely white, and a wisp of white flames flickered in his eyes. This time, his opponent's attack was faster and more violent. Do you see any clues on Tang Hao's body? What kind of technique is that? His soul rings can actually explode? Furthermore, from the looks of it, every time his soul rings explode, his soul power increases by leaps and bounds. It's becoming more and more terrifying. I only want to know if exploding soul rings can be recovered. Would he die after all 9 of his soul rings exploded? Could it be that this Tang Hao wants to perish together with the thousand paths? In the VIP seats, some of the spectators frowned. They were shocked by Tang Hao's methods. Tang San looked up at Tang Hao in the sky. His hands were tightly gripping the corners of his shirt, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. He seemed to be worried for Tang Hao. From time to time, he would look at Chu Bei with a pleading look in his eyes. I seem to understand some of your methods. In the sky, Thousand Streams nodded thoughtfully. Then, golden light erupted from his body, and his entire body turned into golden flames as he charged towards Tang Hao. A surging holy aura burst out from his body, and the huge golden flames caused the air to distort. He struck out with his palm as fast as lightning. In an instant, Thousand Streams' palm, which was wrapped in golden flames, collided with Tang Hao's fist, which had an even more powerful aura. Break! Tang Hao roared. Amidst his intimidating roar, his fourth soul ring exploded again. Boom! An incomparably terrifying explosive force instantly caused a large patch of space to shatter into pieces. At the point of collision, the huge energy undulations surged into the sky and turned into a huge white pillar of light. It actually broke through the golden flames around Thousand Streams' body. It seems like I've underestimated you. Under Tang Hao's fist, Thousand Streams' body couldn't help but take a step back. Then, as his cold voice sounded, his third soul ring lit up. Suddenly, a layer of golden light appeared on his palm, and an extremely powerful suction force was produced from within the light. In the blink of an eye, the white light around Tang Hao's body was completely absorbed. It was also at this moment that Tang Hao's body, which was charging forward with an incomparably wild momentum, came to a sudden stop in midair. He was forcefully stopped. Bang! Thousand Streams' palm flipped over and reached out, quickly sticking to Tang Hao's body. Accompanied by a low, muffled sound, Tang Hao's chest immediately caved in. He spat out blood from his mouth, and his breathing became chaotic. His face was also pale. "Father!" Tang San exclaimed, and there was a hint of anxiety in his voice. "Don't worry, San." Tang Hao somersaulted in the air and stabilized his body. After wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, he looked at Tang San and gestured for him not to worry. Boom, 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 boom. Under the gaze of everyone present, the 5, 6, 7, 8 black soul rings on Tang Hao's body exploded one after another. Every explosion brought about a loud sound that deeply shook everyone's soul. It was like the sound of a gong from hell. In that instant, the void around Tang Hao started to vibrate, and his soul power undulations increased crazily once again. Compared to the previous 2 times, there seemed to be no limit to the increase this time, and his soul power was endless. Again, Tang Hao suddenly laughed out loud like a madman, and the incomparably huge clear sky hammer appeared behind his back. The clear sky hammer seemed to have sensed Tang Hao's aura, and it actually released an excited buzz from its body. Looking at Tang Hao at this moment, Thousand Streams' expression had already become serious. This was especially so when he met Tang Hao's wild gaze, and he frowned deeply. He could deeply feel that Tang Hao was overdrawing his own life, force time and time again. Through that strange method, he was continuously allowing his strength to approach the strength of a god. At this moment, even though he was wearing a full set of angelic armor, he still felt a little threatened by Tang Hao's terrifying aura. Boss Chu, what kind of method is Tang Hao using? On the main stage, Ning Fengji and the others looked at Chu Bei again, and they waited for him to explain. Even Bibi Dong subconsciously pricked up her ears. She was also very wary of this power. If she were to fight Tang Hao now, she was not confident that she could defeat him. She would most likely lose. The method that Tang Hao is using to forcefully increase his soul power comes from the Clear Sky sect's Great Simurgh Hammer, and it's also the most domineering ultimate technique of the Great Simurgh Hammer. This ultimate technique is called Exploding Rings, Chu Bei said plainly. Exploding Rings? Ning Fengji and the others seemed to be hearing this term for the first time, and they became more and more curious. Every soul ring can undergo an exploding ring. After the exploding ring, the soul ring's strength will be completely unleashed, and it will become the exploder's own strength. From then on, It will fuse into one's attack, and it will produce a strength that far exceeds one's own. When the exploding ring is detonated, the higher the quality of the exploding ring, the greater the effect. For example, when Tang Hao detonated his first soul ring, the 1,000 Dao flow was able to block it with his bare hands. However, when his second, third, and fourth soul rings detonated at the same time, he had no choice but to use his soul skills. And now, when Tang Hao's fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth soul rings detonated at the same time, he has no choice but to be extremely careful. Chu Bei's gaze swept across Ning Fengji and the others as he spoke. Such a terrifying ultimate technique must have some side effects, right? Ning Fengji asked. If everyone in the Clear Sky sect could use this technique, the Martial Spirit Hall would not have its current status. Chu Bei nodded slightly. Exploding rings can be said to be the Great Sumeru Hammer's ultimate technique. This is because when all of the soul rings are detonated, the user will enter a weakened state. Furthermore, exploding rings are an extremely dangerous technique. If one does not control it well, one's own strength will not be able to suppress the energy produced by the exploding rings, and it is very likely that one will be devoured by the energy produced by the exploding rings. Only someone like Tang Hao, who has a strong physique and extremely strong talent, can use this technique. If it were anyone else, using this ultimate technique would be no different from committing suicide. Furthermore, after the exploding rings, all of the exploder's soul rings will disappear. It will take a full 3 days for the exploder's soul rings to gradually recover. The exploding rings can only be used after 36 days. I see. After listening to Chu Bei's explanation, Ning Fengji and the others nodded thoughtfully. Rumble, rumble, rumble. In the sky above the arena, Tang Hao's figure moved again. This time, his body seemed to have split and actually became illusory. It was as if a ghost had brought along countless afterimages from all directions and swept towards the 1,000 Dao flow. Chapter 242. I'll let you experience the power of a god. Looking at Tang Hao, who was attacking with a sharp aura, 1,000 Dao Lu's eyes narrowed as he snorted coldly. With a loud bang, the 6 wings on his back flapped at the same time, and an incomparable golden flame completely enveloped his body. At the same time, the incomplete golden ring on his back flickered, and with him as the center, a golden light filled with a holy aura spread out. Under the flickering of the incomplete golden ring, another layer of light that released a holy aura appeared on the surface of 1,000 Dao Lu's flames. Whoosh! With a piercing sound, 1,000 Dao Lu transformed into a golden shooting star. He ignored Tang Hao's shadow and clenched his right hand into a fist, heading straight for Tang Hao, who had the most terrifying aura. On the battlefield, the two figures were like shooting stars chasing after the moon. Tang Hao had no intention of dodging. He held the clear sky hammer with both hands and condensed all the soul power in his body onto the hammer. Boom! The two figures collided, and a huge gold and white pillar of light shot into the sky, reaching thousands of meters high. The terrifying aftershock caused the blood and chi of the people in the plaza to churn. Those with weaker cultivations directly rolled their eyes and fainted. At the point of collision, before the dazzling light dissipated, a figure shot down from above like a cannonball and heavily smashed into the stage. Why didn't your 100,000-year soul ring explode? If it did, it might have injured me. 1,000 Dao Lu slowly descended from the dazzling light. His body hovered in the air as he looked at the deep black hole on the stage. As his calm voice fell, he stretched out his right palm, and a huge suction force sucked Tang Hao out of the pitch-black pit into the air. At this moment, Tang Hao's clothes were torn, and his entire body was covered in burn marks. He spat out blood uncontrollably, and his aura was extremely weak. You don't have the strength to speak anymore? Forget it. I'll send you to my son to repent. As he spoke, 1,000 Dao Lu raised his right palm, and a ball of golden flames gathered in his palm. Boss Chu, you. At this moment, Ning Fengji looked at Chu Bei's back. Before he could say anything, Chu Bei took a step forward and disappeared from the rostrum. Is this the strength of the Dolua Palace's head consecrator, 1,000 Dao Lu? As expected of an expert, standing at the pinnacle of the continent. Even the vast sky Dolua wasn't able to hurt him in that state. Just what rank is he at? Does the golden soul ring behind him represent God? On the spectator stand, everyone looked at Tang Hao, who was on the verge of death, and could not help but feel pity for him. Even if he was once the strongest expert of the younger generation, he would still fall at the hands of the peak experts of the continent. Neptune's hammer. Tang San soared into the sky. The clear sky hammer in his hand released a blue light and smashed towards the thousand streams with a piercing sound. Hee, little fellow, are you in such a hurry to die before your father? Thousand streams glanced at Tang San with disdain. The attack that was originally aimed at Tang Hao changed its trajectory and went to meet Tang San's clear sky hammer. Chila. As expected, the streak of golden light unleashed by the thousand Dao streams easily destroyed Tang San's clear sky hammer, which had been infused with the power of the sea god and could kill a rank 85 soul Dolua. Don't touch San Air. Tang Hao's 100,000-year soul ring lit up, and a little terrifying soul power erupted from his extremely weak body, helping Tang San block the thousand streams attack. What a touching scene. Thousand streams let out a cold laugh. I've decided not to kill you first. You killed my son, so I'll let you taste the pain of losing your son. Furthermore, I want you to witness his death with your own eyes. Thousand Stream's eyes were slightly bloodshot, and his gaze towards Tang San was filled with ruthlessness and bloodlust. As his cold voice fell, a golden ring of light appeared in Thousand Stream's palm, and a huge suction force locked onto Tang San's body. In an instant, Tang San's slightly frail body flew uncontrollably towards Thousand Streams. Don't hurt little San. Tang Hao roared with all the strength in his body. In the next moment, his originally sunken chest suddenly expanded, and a wave of soul power that was far more terrifying than before erupted. The ninth soul ring on his body vibrated and let out an ear-piercing buzzing sound. Ian, for little San, I hope you can understand me, as he muttered. Strange demonic patterns suddenly appeared on Tang Hao's pale face. His hair stood upright, and his black pupils turned blood red. A berserk aura swept through the entire arena. Roar! Tang Hao roared towards the sky. However, just as his 100,000-year soul ring was about to explode, a cool breeze blew past, and an invisible force forcefully suppressed his soul ring that was about to explode. Sensing that Tang Hao's berserk soul power had calmed down, Thousand Streams frowned. After a flash of confusion in his eyes, a golden spear appeared in his right hand, and he threw it towards Tang San, who was being sucked over by him. Third brother, little San? Seeing that the golden spear was about to pierce through Tang San, Xiao Wu, Dai Mu Bai, and the others subconsciously cried out in alarm, their eyes filled with fear. Everyone in the spectator stands and VIP stands swallowed, and a small number of people had pity in their eyes. Throughout the history of the continent, the person with the most terrifying talent was about to fall. Of course, there were also some people who were incomparably calm at this moment. For example, Yu Xiaojiang, Ning Fangji, Yu Tianhao, and the others' expressions didn't change much, but there was a hint of anticipation in their eyes, as if they were waiting for something. As for Tang Hao, he slowly closed his eyes, and his body fell from the sky like a kite with a broken string. A smile appeared on his face, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his body, and he had handed it over to someone else. Clang! The crisp sound of metal colliding rang out. Seeing that the golden spear was about to pierce through Tang San, a layer of energy appeared above Tang San's body. The energy layer was as thin as a cicada's wing, and if one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to discover its existence. However, this light layer, which was only 1 or 2 millimeters thick, had blocked that monstrous golden spear for Tang San. In the next moment, under everyone's gaze, ripples appeared in the air beside Tang San, and a figure slowly appeared. Boss. When Dai Mu Bai, Ning Rongrong, Xiao Wu, and the others saw the figure in the purple light, they were all emotional, and their eyes were filled with tears. They all knew that their boss wouldn't sit by and watch, but they were still afraid. They were afraid that their boss wouldn't be able to make it in time, afraid that Tang San would be pierced by the golden spear. Fortunately, at the most dangerous moment, the boss they were looking forward to appeared. Everything was daunting, but not dangerous. Master, disciple has troubled you. Tang San looked at Chu Bei and lightly bit his lips. The moment the energy layer appeared, the suction force from the 1,000 streams on his body was cut off. It's fine, go down and wait. Leave the rest to me. Chu Bei patted Tang San's little head, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Okay. Meeting Chu Bei's warm gaze, Tang San subconsciously nodded, and then landed beside Tang Hao on the stage. You have already fought with him, and your strength is no match for him. You shouldn't blame me for interfering in your matters, right? Chu Bei put his hands behind his back and looked at Tang Hao with a smile on his face. I can't thank Senior enough for standing up for me. How would I dare to blame you? Tang Hao hurriedly said. Tang Hao's gaze was filled with gratitude. The reason he was grateful was not only because the other party had taught Tang San, but also because the other party had prevented him from using the 9th ring. The 100,000-year red soul ring had been sacrificed to him by Ian. Even in the battle with the 1,000 streams, he had only blown up to the 8th ring. If Tang San's life hadn't been in danger, he definitely wouldn't have thought of blowing up the 9th ring. Fortunately, the moment the 9th ring exploded, Tang San's boss, that unfathomable god, used a supreme divine ability to forcibly suppress the berserk power in the soul ring. Father, how are you? Looking at Tang Hao, who was breathing intermittently, Tang San's eyes were red. Sanner, you have met a good boss. He is stronger than your father, and he can teach you far more than I can. Tang Hao struggled to open his heavy eyelids. His gaze was filled with gratification. Your future is limitless. Perhaps you can step into the legendary immortal state like your boss. The Yin-Yang elders are dead, and your father's wish has been fulfilled. It's time to accompany your mother. Let the past be the past. Don't look into it anymore. It's time to end it. Tang Hao, you are not only a husband, but also a father. Don't tell me you only live for Ian. Don't you want to see San grow up? See him start a family? See him have a group of wives? Just as Tang Hao's lonely voice fell, Chu Bei's calm but dignified voice rang in his ears. Hearing Chu Bei's words, Tang Hao's body trembled slightly, and then the corners of his mouth curled up into a bitter smile. He knew his own body best. In the battle a few years ago, he was already an arrow at the end of its flight. His internal organs were all destroyed. If not for his strong willpower, he would have died long ago. Today, he had successfully killed the last of the Yin-Yang elders and gotten his revenge. In addition, after blowing up 8 rings in a row, his last bit of life force had been squeezed out. Right now, although he still had some strength, this should be the so-called final radiance of the setting sun. He could already see the god of death beckoning to him. Boss Chu, you might not know, but my body, remember, in front of the all-heavens shop, as long as you have money, anything is possible. Without waiting for Tang Hao to finish speaking, Chu Bei opened his mouth and interrupted him. Let's not talk about you. Who says that Ian can't be resurrected? Don't you look forward to the day when the 3 of you are reunited? Hearing Chu Bei's words, this time, Tang Hao actually straightened his body out of nowhere. His eyes looked at Chu Bei in shock. You just said that Ian can be resurrected. It's not difficult, as long as you have the money. Chu Bei glanced indifferently at Tang Hao. With a wave of his right hand, he tossed out a red pill. Now, you should rest well and look forward to the day when that day comes. Ian. Tang Hao caught the red pill that Chu Bei tossed over. After swallowing it, he repeatedly muttered, Resurrection? Can she really be resurrected? Chu Bei ignored Tang Hao and turned his gaze to the 1,000 streams. Chapter 243. I thought you wouldn't make a move. 1,000 Dao Lu glanced at Chu Bei and snorted. I've said it before. If you make a move on little 3, I'll kill you. Chu Bei calmly looked at the 1,000 Dao flow. His emotionless voice was not loud, but it clearly resounded in the minds of everyone present. You're too confident. Qian Daolu stared coldly at Chu Bei. The incomplete golden soul ring behind him trembled, and an incomparably terrifying pressure spread out from him. I knew Boss Chu wouldn't watch his disciples get killed by Thousand Daolu. Just by looking at his face, I can tell that he's someone who's protective of his disciples. Heavens, what's going on? I came here to watch the Soul Master tournament, and the 7 kids from the All Heaven shop won the championship. That was enough to shock me. Then, the vast sky Dolua, Tang Hao, reappeared and used his terrifying strength to kill the Yin and Yang reverends of the Martial Soul Hall. After that, the pinnacle Dolua Thousand Daolu defeated the vast sky Dolua Tang Hao. Now, is Boss Chu going to fight Thousand Daolu again? Haha, I didn't come here for nothing. Thousand Daolu against Boss Chu. One is the most powerful person on the continent for hundreds of years, while the other is the owner of the All Heaven shop. It's a blessing of 3 lifetimes to be able to watch their battle. The crowd of spectators looked at Qin Daolu and Chu Bei, who were facing each other in the air above the stage. Their faces were filled with excitement and anticipation. No matter who wins, this battle is destined to be passed down through the ages. On the main stage, the White Tiger Emperor looked at the 2 figures in the sky and couldn't help but sigh. Sect Master Ning, I'm sure you want Boss Chu to win, right? Yu Tianhao tilted his head and looked at Ning Fengji. Aren't you? Ning Fengji asked. Yu Tianhao smiled and didn't deny it. Bibi Dong was still sitting on her chair. Her eyes were fixed on Thousand Daolu and Chu Bei in the sky, and the soul power on her body fluctuated faintly. At this moment, a figure jumped onto the main stage and walked to her side. What are you doing here? Are you here to mock me? I didn't ask you to plead for mercy last time. Bibi Dong coldly looked at the man beside him who he loved and hated. Dong Dong, listen to me. Under any circumstances, don't make a move against him. The person who came was Yu Shaojiang, and he pointed at Chu Bei in the sky. Why should I listen to you? If the 2 of them fought, both of them would definitely suffer. At that time, it will be the best opportunity for me to kill them both. Bibi Dong narrowed his eyes and glanced at Chu Bei before looking at Yu Shaojiang. Last time, you begged him to spare me, and this time, you asked me not to kill him. You really know how to be a good person. Dong Dong, you are wrong. Hearing Bibi Dong's mockery, Yu Shaojiang took a deep breath and shook his head. I told you not to make a move on him, not because I want you to spare him, but because I want you to stop provoking him. Last time, Boss Chu spared your life because of me. If you make a move on him again, I'm afraid he won't care about me anymore. What are you trying to say? Bibi Dong stared at Yu Shaojiang, and his voice became incomparably low. Not to mention 1,000 Daolu. Even if there were 10 of you, you wouldn't be his match. Yu Shaojiang placed his hands on Bibi Dong's shoulders. Listen to me, don't make a move at any time. Bibi Dong looked straight at Yu Shaojiang. What do you know? With the angel set, the 1,000 Daolu is infinitely close to the God realm. With your strength, you should have noticed the battle on the Sea Gods Island 3 days ago, right? That was a battle between 2 gods, a battle between real gods. Speaking until here, Yu Shaojiang pointed at Chu Bei with a flushed face, as if he was using all his strength to shout, "He is the true god who defeated the sea god." No, impossible. Bibi Dong's body trembled. You are lying to me. You must be lying to me. If he is a true god, why hasn't he gone to the god realm? Why is he still in the Dolua continent? Haha, just watch. Yu Shaojiang pulled a chair over and sat down beside Bibi Dong. Fortunately, everyone in the spectators' stand and the VIP seats were focused on the 1,000 Daolu and Chu Bei. Otherwise, they would have been shocked to see Yu Shaojiang so fearless of Bibi Dong. True God. On the main stage, Ning Fengji, Yu Tianhao, the White Tiger Emperor, and the Snowy Night Emperor were all shocked when they heard Yu Shaojiang shout. When they looked up at the figure in the sky again, their eyes were filled with astonishment. In the sky above the stage, Chu Bei had his hands behind his back. His robes fluttered in the wind, and he was standing very casually. He stepped lightly in the air with his right foot, and a thin layer of energy rippled with him as the center, instantly enveloping the entire plaza. Is Boss Chu using this method because he is worried that we will be injured by the aftershocks? In the VIP seats, a Soul Dolua couldn't help but guess. Many people had the same thought as him. After all, They had seen the defensive strength of the energy ripples with their own eyes. They had easily blocked the 1,000 Daolu's attack. When they looked up at the sky again, they couldn't think of any other use for the energy ripples apart from protecting them. What a joke. At a time like this, you still have the time to care about their lives. 1,000 Daolu glanced at Chu Bei and mocked him. I don't want them to die because of me. I only kill those who deserve to be killed. Chu Bei stepped into the air and approached 1,000 Daolu step by step. There was a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. Looking at Chu Bei, who was approaching him step by step, Qian Daolu frowned. It wasn't because his soul power undulations were too frightening. On the contrary, he was too ordinary. There weren't any soul power undulations from his body. He was just like an ordinary person. However, if one observed him closely, they would realize that he had an aura that was different from soul power. If the strange aura on Chu Bei's body only made Qian Daofan curious and puzzled, then when he gathered all of his vast spiritual energy and tried to lock onto Chu Bei, his heart was truly stirred up. This was because he realized that his spiritual power couldn't lock onto his opponent. His opponent was so ethereal. It was as if he had become the core of heaven and earth. It wasn't just 1,000 Daolu. Everyone below, including Bibi Dong, Ning Fangji, and the others, felt that Chu Bei, who seemed to have fused with the origin energy of heaven and earth, wasn't real. His body seemed to fill every corner of the plaza, and he wasn't just in the air. 1,000 Daolu's face darkened. The playful look on his face disappeared. An incomparably frightening soul power was released from his body. The pressure that came from his body pressed down on the thin energy ripples below, bringing about a demonic sound that sounded like a ghost howl. At the same time, a layer of golden brilliance spread out from the incomplete golden bracelet behind him like a fog. In an instant, the entire plaza was covered by golden brilliance. Pretending to be mysterious, let this old man test your strength. As soon as his cold voice fell, 1,000 stream heavily slammed the scepter in his hand. Suddenly, the scepter released a dazzling golden light. A scorching golden flame turned into a fire phoenix. It flew towards Chu Bei with a screech. The moment the golden flames appeared, the temperature of the air in the square instantly rose. Everyone could even feel a stinging, burning sensation on their faces. As for the places where the fire phoenix passed, the space was burned into pieces. From this, one could see how terrifying its power was. Have you seen the domain of a true god? Chu Bei crossed his arms in front of his chest and smiled as he looked at 1,000 Daolu. As his calm voice sounded, the void above the plaza started to crack, with his body as the center. Several pitch-black gaps started to spread. Countless colorful spots of light spewed out from the gaps. In an instant, they filled the entire space. If one looked closely, they would realize that these spots of light were more like colorful fire particles. What's happening? My chair. The railings have changed. The steps have also changed. What kind of ability is this? Even the ground has changed. In an instant, everyone's faces changed. Their faces were filled with fear. As far as the eye could see, the sandalwood chairs, the marble steps, the blue stone floor, the rostrum, and the fighting stage all seemed to have turned into solid flames. Some were gold, some were silver, some were blue, and some were purple. Is this Boss Chu's technique? The rulers of the Snowy Night Emperor and the White Tiger Emperor looked at each other as they saw the changes around them. As the rulers of a country, they were used to seeing all kinds of storms. However, they were still deeply shocked by what was happening before their eyes. This ability had already surpassed the limits of humans. Perhaps only those legendary existences could use this ability. On the fighting stage, Tang Hao was also shocked. He looked at the figure above in a daze. On the other hand, Tang San, Dai Mubai, Xiao Wu, and the others did not look surprised. After all, it was not the first time they had seen their boss use this technique. Is this the domain of a god? Looking at the entire plaza being turned into flames, Bibi Dong took a deep breath. His eyes were filled with shock. At this moment, high up in the sky, Chu Bei's entire body was emitting colorful light. The domineering aura that he released seemed to be able to control everything in this space. Glancing indifferently at the fire phoenix, Chu Bei stretched out a finger. A beam of purple light shot out from the tip of his finger. Whoosh! In an instant, the purple light pierced through the fire phoenix and shot straight towards Thousand Dao Lu. The pierced golden flame phoenix trembled slightly before dissipating into ripples in the void. In his line of sight, the purple light flashed past. Thousand Dao Lu felt an inexplicable chill in his heart. His fourth soul ring lit up, and his body was immediately covered by a layer of golden light. Clang! The golden light shattered and turned into a rain of light. The remaining power of the purple light directly hit Thousand Dao Lu's chest. Thousand Dao Lu was instantly sent flying. The scepter in his hand was thrown away, and he spat out blood. Thousand Dao Lu's blood was different from the red of an ordinary person. There was a little gold in it. Chapter 244. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Why do I feel that the head consecrator's Thousand Das Flow is not on the same level as Boss Chu? You didn't see wrongly. Thousand Das Flow was indeed sent flying by Boss Chu's attack. Furthermore, it was just a casual finger attack. I can tell that Boss Chu didn't use much strength. Holy sh*t. This Boss Chu really makes me open my eyes again and again. Thousand Das Flow's strength is already close to that of a god. Could it be that this Boss Chu is really a living god? According to the ancient records of the clan, all gods who become gods at level 100 will leave the Dolua continent and head to the legendary god realm. Why is Boss Chu still here? Looking at Thousand Das Flow, who was sent flying, everyone's pupils suddenly constricted. When they looked at Chu Bei again, there was only respect left in their eyes. Is this the power of a true god? Thinking back to the terrifying energy contained in the purple light that the other party had casually sent out, Bibi Dong felt a sense of helplessness from the bottom of her heart. Only now did she realize that during the battle at Heaven's Vault Mountain, the other party had already tried his best to suppress his energy. Unknowingly, she had already believed Yu Xiaojiang's words. This Boss Chu was really a god, a living god who had yet to head to the god realm. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. You must have obtained the inheritance of some god, and like me, you are wearing a god's equipment set. Thousand Das Flow stabilized his body. His golden eyes locked onto Chu Bei. There are no more gods in the Dolua continent. All the true gods are in the god realm. You are not. You are definitely not. Looking at Thousand Das Flow, who seemed to have gone crazy, Chu Bei smiled and did not reply. From the moment he attacked, the other party should have already known the answer in his heart. He was just unwilling to admit it. What's more, he was only wearing an ordinary robe. He didn't have the same heavy armor as the other party. You, Tang Hao, and those little fellows. Anyone who threatens the martial spirit palace will all die. With a loud roar, Qian Daoliu's body shone with a golden light. The 6 wings on his back flapped, and his aura was instantly raised to its peak. Then, he suddenly took a step forward with his left foot and called back the scepter with his right hand. The 6-winged angel brand on his forehead shot out a bright golden light. Azure golden light shot out from the scepter, and the power of the angel gods surged. In the next moment, Qian Daolu held the scepter with both hands and threw it at Chu Bei. High up in the sky, the scepter infused with the power of the 1,000 streams of angel god pierced through the void and appeared in front of Chu Bei. Using a human to shake a god? How laughable. Chu Bei took a step forward. Facing the scepter that brought with it an overflowing might, he did not have the slightest intention of retreating. He raised his right hand, and his palm that was filled with multicolored radiance directly grabbed one end of the scepter. When Chu Bei's right hand came into contact with the scepter, colorful flames circulated in his palm, causing his entire hand to become gorgeous, as if it was completely condensed from energy. When the two collided, the scepter, which was originally moving forward, suddenly stopped. It could no longer move forward, and it stopped abruptly in Chu Bei's right hand. Explode for me. Seeing Chu Bei catch the scepter with his bare hands, the corners of Qian Daoliu's mouth suddenly revealed a strange smile, as if his scheme had succeeded. With a loud roar, an incomparably terrifying power suddenly erupted from the scepter. Under this earth-shattering energy, the void twisted like a water snake, and the center of it flickered with a golden light, which was extremely dazzling. Although this attack was not Qian sole skill, it was an attack that he had infused with the power of the angel god. Amidst the explosion, the corners of Qian mouth curled up. Not to mention a quasi-god. Even a real god would be seriously injured if they were not killed by the power of the angel god at such a close distance. On the rostrum, Bibi Dong's heart trembled when she felt the power of the angel god. She was not the only one. Everyone's eyes were focused on the dazzling golden light. However, the dazzling golden light was dead silent, and there was not even a scream. Is he dead? Qian Daolu clenched his fists, and his expression was a little nervous as he stared blankly at the scepter in the golden light. Just a mere angel god. Not to mention borrowing her divine power. Even if she really appeared here, what could she do to me? Just as Qian Daolu was about to move to check on Chu Bei's condition, an extremely calm but majestic voice came from the golden light. The voice was not loud, but it carried a pressure that filled the sky, shaking everyone's heart, especially the words that came out of the other party's mouth, which were filled with strong confidence. The light dissipated, and Chu Bei stood in the same place, not even taking a step back. He just stood there quietly, but he gave off a domineering feeling, as if he was an emperor, making people want to worship him. Unknowingly, the scepter that originally carried the dazzling golden light had lost its luster, and it was incomparably dim. Its terrifying aura was also gone, and it was being casually played with by Chu Bei. Qian Daolu frowned deeply, but in the next moment, a crisp cracking sound made his face turn pale, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. The sudden surge of soul power almost caused him to go berserk. As one of the angel god equipment, the angel scepter had been forcefully crushed into pieces by the other party and scattered into the sky. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The moment the angel scepter was destroyed by Chu Bei, the 6 pieces of armor on Qian Daolu's body trembled at the same time, and there was a terrifying collision sound. Vaguely, a huge shadow could be seen slowly appearing behind Qian Daolu. The shadow was a woman with 6 wings on her back, holding a long sword in her hand, and letting out a sinister roar at Chu Bei. You want to fight? Chu Bei looked at Qian Daolu, or more accurately, at the shadow behind him. He shook his head and narrowed his eyes. Since you dare to come, I'll make sure you don't return. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The collision sound of the 6 pieces of armor on Qian Daolu's body became even more violent, and the huge shadow became more and more solid. The low roar from its mouth became even more terrifying, and there was a strong killing intent in it. Do you see the shadow behind Qian Daolu? What is that? God. It must be a god. From what I know, Qian Daolu belongs to the angel clan. For thousands of years, their martial soul has always been a 6-winged angel. The shadow behind him should be the angel god that they believe in. Does that mean that the angel god is going to descend from the god realm? Could it be that Boss Chu crushed the scepter and angered her? The crowd below stared at the huge shadow behind Qian Daolu in horror, and their throats twitched subconsciously. What? Are you hesitating? Chu Bei looked at the shadow behind Qian Daolu mockingly, and after his sarcastic words, he clenched his right hand, and the colorful flames around him gathered in the palm of his hand. Not long after, a gorgeous fire stick condensed from colorful flames appeared in his hand. Chu Bei held the fire stick in his hand, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared above Qian Daolu's head. Qian Daolu's pupils shrank when he felt the pressure above his head, and the 3-meter-wide broken golden ring immediately flew above his head and started to spin wildly. Chu Bei swung the stick down, and with a thunderclap, a powerful beam of fire shot out from the top of the fire stick and heavily struck down. Boom! With a bang, the broken golden ring was pressed down on Qian Daolu's head by the beam of fire. Suddenly, Qian Daolu's body uncontrollably slammed into the energy ripples below, and the pain in his body made him lose control of his body for a moment. Damn it! Qian Daolu endured the piercing pain from the injuries on his body that could not be healed, and flew back into the air, pulling away from Chu Bei. Gap! This word inexplicably rose from the depths of his heart. Just as Chu Bei thought, The moment he made his move, Qian Daolu already knew that he had truly stepped into the god realm. I've already become a quasi-god with the help of the angel god armor, but why is the gap still so big? Qian Daolu stared at Chu Bei, and his roar shook the sky, his voice filled with a strong sense of unwillingness. With the angel god armor, he could easily defeat Tang Hao with the broken ring. But in front of a true god, the terrifying power that stood at the peak in the eyes of the world was a joke, and it could not even cause a stir. At this moment on the fighting stage, in the spectator stands, in the VIP seats, on the rostrum, everyone looked at the somewhat crazy Qian Daolu, and there was a hint of pity in their eyes. A peerless expert who had stood at the peak of the Dolua continent for hundreds of years, facing Boss Chu, who had only appeared in front of everyone for less than a month, was so helpless. What was even more helpless was that Tang Hao had not revealed his martial soul, let alone his soul rings. Tang Hao's calm and composed appearance made it seem as if every attack was very casual. In the battle against Qian Daolu, it was as if he was just playing around. Myriad suns soaring sky. Qian Daolu glanced at Tang Hao and Tang San on the fighting stage, and then his gaze returned to Chu Bei fiercely. Accompanied by a low roar, the complete 9 soul rings on his body disappeared into the incomplete 10th soul ring at the same time. Gradually, as the 9 soul rings disappeared, the originally incomplete 10th soul ring slowly turned into a complete golden soul ring. At this moment, Qian Daolu's soul power aura skyrocketed, but his body became 2 to 3 times thinner. There were no traces of blood on his face, and he was as pale as a zombie. Looking at it from afar, Qian Daolu was like a dazzling sun in the sky. In the bright light, his body was nowhere to be seen, and only the huge golden soul ring could be seen. Rumble. Suddenly, the void shook, and the ground cracked. The dazzling sun crushed the void and swept towards Chu Bei. Everyone in the arena held their breaths and stared at the battlefield without blinking. They suddenly realized that a small amount of soul power in their bodies was uncontrollably flowing towards the golden soul ring. Perhaps it was because of the support of everyone's soul power, but the sun formed by Qian Daolu became even more dazzling, and no one could look directly at it for a long time. A futile struggle. As his emotionless voice sounded, Chu Bei waved his sleeve. Suddenly, a majestic and terrifying purple ripple spread out. At this moment, everyone suddenly realized that the light in the arena had dimmed, and the sunlight had been withdrawn. The colorful fire particles that filled every corner of the arena seemed to have received an order, and instantly gathered towards the golden soul ring. Chi. In the blink of an eye, the dazzling sun that was sweeping towards Chu Bei was surrounded by millions of fire particles, and was forcefully stopped. More and more fire particles gathered, and in the blink of an eye, they formed a colorful fireball with a diameter of 100 meters. The fireball completely drowned out the dazzling light of the golden soul ring. Ah! A hysterical roar from Qian Daolu came out from the fireball, and it was filled with pain and unwillingness. Explode! Chu Bei looked coldly in front of him, and coldly uttered a syllable. He reached out with his right hand and grasped at the void. Boom! In the next moment, an earth-shattering explosion reverberated in the air above the arena. To be precise, the entire Heaven-Do Imperial City heard this thunderous explosion. The fireball's explosion didn't cause any destructive energy waves, and it didn't cause any flames to burn the sky. It seemed to have exploded from the outside. To the spectators below, they could only hear the explosion, but they didn't see any turbulence in the void. Under everyone's gaze, the 100-meter-wide fireball gradually turned into colorful light and dissipated into the void. Everyone's pupils shrank as they looked at the white bones that were falling vertically. Their expressions changed, and their brows were filled with fear. You shouldn't have attacked. Chu Bei shook his head and calmly spoke. He waved his hand, and a cool breeze blew past. The white bones turned into a wisp of green smoke and dissipated into the void. Is Qian Daolu dead? The exceptional Dolua who stood at the peak of the continent for 100 years really died just like that? Is Boss Chu really a god? After a long while, everyone recovered from their shock. They looked at the figure standing in the void with his hands behind his back in astonishment. They subconsciously swallowed their saliva. On the main stage, Bibi Dong clenched his fists as he looked at Chu Bei's back. He was a little dazed. Did you see that? This is the reason why I didn't let you attack. Yu Xiaojiang pointed at the sky as he spoke to Bibi Dong. You're really considerate. Bibi Dong coldly glanced at Yu Xiaojiang. The Snowy Night Emperor, White Tiger Emperor, Yu Tianhao, and Ning Fengji looked at each other and remained silent. The Dolua Palace's great consecrator, the strongest person on the continent, had fallen just like that. Following Qian Daoliu's death, the martial spirit hall's overall strength had dropped by a level. Third brother, Boss One. Xiao Wu tugged on Tang San's arm and excitedly pointed to the sky. She had a look of joy on her face. With Boss around, let's see who dares to bully us in the future. Ning Rongrong fiercely waved her little fist with a proud look on her face. It seems like a line of difference, but it's actually a world of difference. Looking at Chu Bei's back, Tang Hao was filled with emotions. A god was a god after all. No matter how strong a person was, they were still ants in front of a god's might. It's over, Tang San softly muttered as he looked in the direction where Qian Daolu had disappeared. Buzz, buzz, buzz. But just when everyone thought that the battle in the sky had ended, the 6 golden armors that were originally draped over Qian Daoliu's body suddenly released a strange buzzing sound, following which, the 6 armors released a dazzling golden light at the same time. Golden threads that could be seen with the naked eye connected to each other. Chapter 245. You still can't hold it in? Looking at the angel god armor that had changed, Chu Bei crossed his arms in front of his chest with a smile on his face. If I don't kill you, how can I appease the hatred in my heart? Suddenly, a dignified woman's voice exploded in the air like thunder. Who is Boss Chu talking to? Is the battle not over yet? It's a woman's voice. Why don't I see her? Look carefully at the angel god armor that Thousand Streams was wearing earlier. A cold female voice sounded in everyone's ears. Everyone's hearts trembled as they looked around, searching for the source of the voice. Angel God. On the rostrum, Bibi Dong looked at the angel god armor that was emitting a golden light. His gaze suddenly focused, and there was shock between his brows. Yu Xiaojiang, Ning Fengji, and the others frowned. They seemed to have realized something. Uncle, who is Boss talking to? Xiao Wu looked at Tang Hao in confusion. Tang Hao frowned, his expression heavy. It should be the god that the angel clan believes in, the angel god. Angel god? Tang San, Xiao Wu, and the others were even more confused. It was also at this moment that a huge gap suddenly appeared in the distant sky. In the next moment, a surging golden light descended from the sky like the sun shining on the earth. The intense golden light instantly enveloped the entire arena. Under everyone's astonished gazes, a woman's figure slowly descended from the gap. Under the golden light, the woman's figure gradually solidified. In the end, although her appearance could not be seen clearly, her figure and facial outline could be seen clearly. The woman raised her hand, and a golden light hit the angel god armor. The angel god armor immediately flew towards her and changed shape in the air. The dazzling golden armor seemed to be completely made according to the woman's body. A bulging breastplate, a narrow and slender waist armor, a golden battle skirt that was about 1.5 feet long, perfectly round pauldrons, and other armor that perfectly covered her body, enveloping her entire body. The little angel brand on her forehead was hooked by a hoop. In the middle of the hoop, a little angel-shaped gem shone brightly. Above the hoop, there were a total of 7 peaks, forming a princess's crown. Those who offend this god, die. The woman suddenly raised her head and looked at Chu Bei. 2 beams of golden light shot out. As she spoke, 6 brilliant and transparent golden wings sprouted from her back. As they flapped gently, rings of golden ripples spread out from her body. Almost at the same time, countless rays of golden light gathered in his palm, forming a golden angelic sword. Apart from the sharp cold light, the sword also carried with it a holy aura, giving people the feeling that it could purify all sins in the world. I am the angel god. The woman stood in the air with her head lowered. Her cold gaze swept across everyone present. Her calm voice was filled with supreme majesty. The wings behind his back flapped, and a holy aura instantly swept across the entire area, causing everyone's body to feel warm. As soon as she finished speaking, the woman's body trembled slightly, and her golden soul rings lit up. Unlike the incomplete golden soul rings of the Thousand Dao sect, the woman's golden soul rings were complete, and there were 10 of them. As the soul rings lit up, golden ripples spread out from the woman's body. Compared to the Thousand Dao sect's angel domain, this terrifying sticky golden light seemed to have a physical body. Just the aura alone was 10 times, or 100 times stronger. Hiss, she's the angel god. A true god has descended. It seems that the legendary god realm really does exist. Is the angel god here to avenge the Thousand Dao sect? Doesn't that mean that Boss Chu and the angel god are going to have a big battle? The angel god should have become a god many years ago, and Boss Chu hasn't gone to the god realm yet. I'm afraid Boss Chu is in danger. Who knows? We haven't fought yet. At least, Boss Chu has never been defeated since he was born. That's because his previous opponents were all humans. This time, it's a god like him. In the stands, the spectators' gazes landed on the woman in the sky. When they heard her calm voice, they couldn't help but gasp. When they felt her holy aura, they felt an inexplicable urge to worship her. It won't be long before I step into this realm, and I'll be stronger than all of you. Bibi Dong stared at Chu Bei and the angel god with a determined gaze. Ning Fingji, the White Tiger Emperor, the Snowy Night Emperor, and Yu Tianhao also looked up at Chu Bei and the angel god. Although they had been in high positions for a long time, they realized that in front of the so-called gods, their power was not worth mentioning. In front of the gods, they could only be admirers and spectators. Only the gods were the center of attention. Brother San, do you think the boss will win? Xiao Wu looked at the 10 golden soul rings on the angel god's body with a worried expression. Don't worry, the sea god is also a god. Didn't he also lose to the boss? Tang San comforted Xiao Wu. However, from the serious expression on his face, it was clear that he wasn't 100% sure. But the sea god was only a clone back then. Ning Rongrong's eyes were also filled with worry. Rumble, however, just as everyone was nervously watching the angel god and Chu Bei, the sky in the distance changed again. Compared to the angel god's descent, there were almost 20 holes in the sky this time. Some of them were 2, 3, or even 5 times bigger than the angel god's descent. Amidst buzzing sounds, lights of all colors shone from these holes. It was extremely beautiful. Although the existences in the holes were trying their best to suppress the terrifying auras, the traces of auras that leaked out were enough to shake everyone's hearts. In the first hole, a tall figure holding a golden trident appeared. Light blue light surged around his body. He looked in Chu Bei's direction and nodded slightly, as if he was greeting him. In the second hole, the figure that appeared was shrouded in a dark aura. Just looking at it made one's heart palpitate inexplicably. In the third hole, there was the figure of a fat man with a big belly. He held a spoon in his left hand and an iron pot in his right. He looked like a chef. In the fourth hole, there was also a woman, just like the angel god. However, her figure was formed by intertwining 9 colors. It was extremely beautiful. In the fifth hole, there was a figure wrapped in red light. In her hand was a crimson longsword. Looking closely at the sword hilt, the word Shura seemed to be soaked in blood. In the sixth hole, there was also a woman. Her figure was enchanting, as if she had some kind of magic. Just looking at her would make one's soul lose itself. Almost at the same time, there was a figure floating in almost all 20 holes. The sea god, the dark god, the culinary god, the 9-colored goddess, the Shura god, the charm goddess. Oh my god, these gods really exist. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? So the gods recorded in the ancient books are not fictional. They actually exist. I never thought that I would be able to see these gods with my own eyes one day. Even if they are just figures, I can't see them clearly. We have Boss Chu to thank for this. If not for him, How would we be able to see these legendary existences? When the gods descended, everyone in the plaza was stunned. Through the descriptions of the gods in the ancient books, they all recognized these gods. Their eyes were filled with passion. Some soul masters who believed in the gods even knelt on the ground devoutly. They clasped their hands together and muttered under their breaths as they prayed. Bibi Dong, Tang Hao, Yu Tianhao, the White Tiger Emperor, and even the titled Dolua present couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and veneration as they looked at the gods in the sky. At this moment, they were no different from ordinary people. Their eyebrows were filled with astonishment. Poseidon, is this the god that you said came from outside the Dolua continent and defeated you? In the sky, the illusory figure holding an iron wok who looked like a chef looked at the illusory figure holding a golden trident and asked, "Old culinary god, you have seen him with your own eyes. You should already know the answer in your heart." The sea god Poseidon smiled. "As you said, I can't feel any soul power undulations from him. But is he really so strong that even you are no match for him?" The culinary god asked. "At least, the clone I left in the Dolua continent was defeated." Poseidon glanced at the culinary god and shrugged. "What if it was your true body that fought with him? What were your chances of winning?" The culinary god asked. Poseidon shook his head. "At that time, I was still somewhat confident. But now, I can't see through him. He seems to be even stronger." "Then I want to see if he is really as powerful as you say." The culinary god wasn't the only one. The other gods in the sky all looked at Chu Bei. However, just as they wanted to use their divine senses to probe him, not only were their divine senses destroyed, but they were also suppressed by his divine senses that were 3 times stronger than theirs. "Don't worry, he won't let you down. I'm praying for the angel god now." The sea god Poseidon looked at the angel god and suddenly laughed. "Look, that's the sea god." Ma Hongjun pointed at Poseidon and shouted excitedly. "Other than the sea god, there are so many other gods. Are they all friends of the sea god? If they are, I must ask the boss to invite them to the All-Heaven shop." Ning Rongrong's eyes widened. She swept her excited gaze across the gods and blurted out, "That's right. I am honored that all of you came to watch this show at the expense of your divine powers." The angel god's cold gaze swept across the 20 figures above her and snorted. As soon as she finished speaking, the angel god glanced at Chu Bei, pointed to the sky, and flew higher into the sky. Chu Bei smiled and nodded to the 20 gods who were watching the show one by one. Then he flew up into the sky. Like the angel god, he didn't want the aftermath of the battle to hurt the ordinary people below. Strangely, the angel god and Chu Bei's figures were getting farther and farther away from the ground, but their bodies didn't change at all. They were still as clear as ever. Chapter 246. In the westernmost region of the continent, an oceanic city. Look up at the sky. My God, who are those people? Most of them are just shadows. I can't even see their faces clearly. That's Boss Chu. He saved us at sea a few days ago. What? He's the Boss Chu who single-handedly defeated the overlord of the deep sea? Then who's that woman standing in front of him? She has 6 golden wings on her back. Sea god. I can't believe I'm seeing the sea god. Doesn't that mean those people in the sky are gods just like the sea god? All of the passers-by on the main road in the city looked up at the scenes in the sky with horror in their eyes. Deep in the ocean, the deep-sea devil whale monarch swept its massive tail through the air, creating massive waves that were over 100 meters tall as it looked up at the sky with incredulity in its eyes. In the central region of the Great Heaven Do Forest. Is he the one who took Sister Xiao Wu away? This was a monster with the head of an ox and the body of a snake. Its head was at least 4 meters in diameter, and its eyes shone like 2 lanterns. It was connected to a massive snake body that was several times thicker than a water tank. What kind of being did you hand Sister Xiao Wu over to? This was the Sky Azure Bull Python, one of the overlords of the Great Star Do Forest. How would I know, boss? The Titan giant ape wore a resigned expression as it stared at Chu Bei in the sky. As a 100,000-year-old soul beast, its sensory abilities were far superior to those of titled Duluos of the same caliber. At this moment, the auras of the figures in the sky were all imbued with an aura that struck fear into the hearts of even forest overlords like them, and they were struck by an urge to prostrate themselves in worship. Judging from the auras emanating from those two, there's definitely going to be a fierce battle. I wonder how Sister Xiaowu is doing now, the Sky Azure Bull Python sighed. On the Sea God's Island, the two of them flew out of the palace, and both of them exuded terrifying auras. However, even as powerful as they were, they couldn't help but shudder at the sight of the figures in the sky. With the appearance of the angel god, I'm afraid that Thousand Streams has already died at the hands of Boss Chu. Poseidon glanced at the angel god and murmured. When his gaze fell on Poseidon, he immediately put his hands together and prayed sincerely. I wonder who will be the winner of their battle. Tang Chun narrowed his eyes and glanced at Chu Bei and the angel god. His gaze was fixed on one of the 20 gaps that was wrapped in red light. His eyes were filled with unwillingness. The Shura inheritance is just a hair's breadth away. The descent of the deities caused a heavenly anomaly. At this moment, everyone on the Dolua continent stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky in horror. Perhaps it was because these gods were large enough, or perhaps it was for some other reason, but no matter where one was on the continent, as long as one raised one's head, they could see the projections of the 20 gods, as well as Chu Bei and the angel god. In the huge arena of Heaven Do Imperial City, the clamor was gone, and the atmosphere was oppressive to the extreme. In the ordinary grandstand and the VIP grandstand, everyone was looking at the sky nervously. They were quietly waiting for the arrival of the battle between the two gods. Do you know that the sky is my home ground? In the distant sky, the angel god glanced at Chu Bei indifferently and spread out the 6 wings on his back. Raising his right hand, he pointed the angelic sword at the sky. Scorching radiant Saint Force connected with the sun easily, forming a huge, scarlet golden pillar of light. It possessed tremendous might. A truly powerful god's strength comes from his own body. No matter where he is or what kind of environment he is in, his strength will not be affected. In other words, no matter where he is, it's his home ground. Chu Bei placed his hands behind his back and smiled at the angel god. His mocking voice echoed in the sky. His words were not only for the angel god to hear, but also for the spectating gods in the sky. Tang San, Dai Mubai, Oscar, and the others in the arena could also hear them. As soon as he finished speaking, a huge screen appeared behind Chu Bei. 22 different flames of different colors danced on the screen. After the 11th rank commodity rights were unlocked, he could once again use the system to exchange for cultivation. His cultivation had been stagnant at the peak of the Dosheng realm. At the Dosheng realm, one needed 5 million willpower to exchange for 1 star. 1 star Do Sheng needed 1,500 willpower to break through to become a 1-star Do Emperor. He used all the willpower he'd obtained in the Dolua continent and directly jumped to become a 3-star Do Emperor. According to the system, his current cultivation was at the 11th rank, 3-star Do Sheng. How arrogant! On the battlefield, the angel god glanced at the screen behind Chu Bei and snorted coldly. He waved the angelic holy sword in his hand and immediately tore the sky apart. Golden light filled the air. In an instant, in the distant sky, with the angel god and Chu Bei as the center, half of the sky was pale gold, while the other half was a brilliant rainbow. The angel god and Chu Bei's domains were clearly separated, each occupying half of the sky. This guy is interesting, especially those flames behind him. Even I am a little afraid of them. The figure who spoke was full of life energy. The hole on his head was 3 times larger than the one on the angel god's head. It was obvious that he was a god stronger than the angel god. Old Light God, if the angel god loses, why don't you go up and show us what the upper limit of that guy's strength is? Poseidon smiled as he looked at the light god. Forget it. I am already a bag of old bones. I don't want him to tear me apart. The light god laughed. Under the gazes of all the gods, the 22 flames on the screen pulsed. Soon after, they gathered behind Chu Bei one after another, forming a pair of wings. Hmm. Seeing the 22 different wings on Chu Bei's back, the angel god frowned as if she couldn't understand. What a trick! After the angel deity recovered from his surprise, he quickly calmed himself down. He raised the angelic sacred sword in his hand and pointed it at Chu Bei. The sun true fire burst from her body, forming a red-gold flame that burned her and the angel god's sword. With a sweep of his hand, a sword chi wrapped in reddish-gold flames traversed the void and raged towards Chu Bei. Unknowingly, a strangely shaped sword had also appeared in Chu Bei's hand. The entire sword looked like a coiled snake. The snake's tail was the hilt, and the snake's head was the tip. The snake's tongue was forked, and the sword's body was covered with blood. Chu Bei swung his sword, and the 22 flame wings on his back seemed to support him. In an instant, the sword chi flew toward the angel god's sword chi. Whoosh! In the midst of the fusion, Chu Bei's sword light instantly annihilated the red gold flames and wreaked havoc towards the angel god. The angel god frowned, and she swung her angelic sword again. 2 more sword chi slashed at Chu Bei's sword chi. On the surface, the angel god appeared calm, but her heart was filled with shock. With just 1 sword strike, she was certain that the other party's sword Dao was superior to hers. She swung her sword and simply infused her power into the sword, using the sword as a medium to unleash this power. Her opponent's sword chi, on the other hand, was imbued with an unstoppable sword intent. The power of the sword itself was secondary. What's with that expression? We've only just started fighting, and you're already looking so serious. Can't you relax a little? Chu Bei shook his sword chi, a playful smile on his face. Don't be so smug. The angel god shot a cold glance at Chu Bei. Golden light flashed from her body, and her eyes grew brighter and brighter. Every time the light in her eyes flickered, the air would ripple like waves. She pointed her angelic sword at the sky, and her 10 golden soul rings pulsed in unison. The tip of the sword absorbed the power of the scorching sun in the sky. When the holy sword had absorbed enough true fire, the angel god raised the holy sword above his head. In an instant, red gold flames surged, and a massive red gold sword chi appeared above the angel god's head. With her angelic sword as the foundation, it pointed straight toward the sky. The terrifying energy rippling from the blade locked onto Chu Bei's body. The angel god's spiritual sense fused with the holy sword, and her essence, energy, and spirit were instantly raised to the peak. Since her sword Dao was inferior to her opponent's, she was going to use the most direct and violent method to shatter his so-called sword Dao. Is that all you've got? Chu Bei's voice carried a hint of mockery. The 22 flaming wings on his back trembled, and tens of thousands of tiny flame particles shot out from them. They attached themselves to the snake-shaped sword in Chu Bei's hand. Angel's Judgment. Sensing the increasingly powerful aura of Chu Bei's sword, the angel god didn't give him any time to prepare. The angel god's holy sword had already reached the sky. Wherever it passed, the void collapsed, and black lightning flashed through the cracks in space. Before the crackling sounds of the black lightning could even spread out, they were engulfed by the pure golden flames on the sword. In the blink of an eye, the red gold sword was already above Chu Bei's head. The angel god swung the holy sword down, and a faint, cold smile appeared at the corner of her lips. She had absorbed a large amount of true fire for this attack, and combined it with her divine power. Looking at the sword in her opponent's hand, it was clear that he hadn't finished preparing. Even if she couldn't kill him with her angel's judgment, she could at least severely injure him. In a battle between gods, once one side fell into a disadvantageous position, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens to turn the tide. But in reality, when faced with the angel god's so-called angel's judgment, Chu Bei's expression didn't show the slightest hint of panic. In fact, he was extremely calm. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, as if the angel god's sword, which had the power to destroy the world, was nothing more than a joke to him. Just as the angel god's sword was about to land on Chu Bei's head, the snake-shaped sword in his hand drew a huge arc in the air. The surrounding flame particles seemed to be attracted to it, and they followed the blade to meet the attack. Chapter 247. On the battlefield, as Chu Bei swung the snake-shaped sword in his hand, the powerful holy sword in the angel god's hand was forced to deviate from its original trajectory under the influence of the flame particles. The angel god was horrified to discover that the primordial fire on the holy sword was being burned away by the seemingly insignificant fire particles. No matter how much she urged the holy power in her body, she could not bring the holy sword down. You are a first-tier god in the godly realm, aren't you? This little bit of power is not enough at all. Just as the primordial fire on the holy sword was completely destroyed by the fire particles, Chu Bei's mocking voice sounded in the angel god's ears. As soon as the mocking voice fell, the snake-shaped sword in Chu Bei's hand turned into a blood-red stream of light. After forming a breathtaking brilliance in the air, it swept across the angel god's holy sword, which had already lost its primordial fire. Clang! First, there was the crisp sound of metal clashing. Then, there was a crisp crack, and the holy sword broke into two. Seeing the broken holy sword, the angel god's heart skipped a beat. Then, she decisively cut off the connection with the holy sword and quickly retreated. However, not long after the angel god retreated, the snake-shaped sword in Chu Bei's hand suddenly flew out. In an instant, it pierced through the void and hit the angel god's body. Whoosh! The angel god armor lit up with dazzling light, forming a spherical screen of light. But in front of the power of the snake-shaped sword, the light screen was so fragile. It was cut open like a thin piece of paper. After cutting open the light screen, the blood-red snake-shaped sword continued to move forward. In front of everyone's eyes, it bombarded the angel god's body. Bang! In the blood-red light, the angel god's armor was cut in half from the forehead to the lower half of her body. Golden blood spurted out from the neat wound. My god, even the angel god is no match for Boss Chu? The angel god was cut in half by Boss Chu's sword. Is this the end of the battle? If the souls of the thousand streams are still floating around and see this scene with their own eyes, they will definitely regret attacking Boss Chu. Boss Chu hasn't even gone to the celestial realm yet. This means that he hasn't been a god for long. How can a new god defeat an old god like the angel god? From today onwards, the strongest power in the Dolua continent will no longer be the three upper sects or the martial soul hall, but Boss Chu's All Heaven's shop. As long as Boss Chu is in power, All Heaven's shop's position will remain unshakable. When everyone saw the angel god cut in half, they all covered their mouths and cried out in shock. Did you guys see that? Even the angel god that the Thousand Dao sect worships is not a match for the boss. On the stage, Ning Rongrong's face was flushed red with excitement, and she was so excited that she danced with joy. Tang San, Dai Mubai, Xiao Wu and the rest were all overjoyed. It was obvious that they had still underestimated their boss's strength. Tang Hao's expression became more and more absent-minded. When he came back to his senses, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. To him, the higher the other party's realm, the more trustworthy the other party's words were. Perhaps his ion could really be revived one day, and their family of three would really be reunited one day. On the rostrum, Yu Xiaojiang, Ning Fengji, and the others were shocked. Bibi Dong was silent. His hands were clenched so tightly that his nails almost penetrated his flesh. That angel god fellow underestimated his opponent. If it were me, I would have given that fellow a strong dose of medicine. A god holding a ladle in one hand and an iron pot in the other said, "Can you stop bragging, Boilermaker? In terms of combat power, you're the weakest here, right? Even the angel god was defeated. Do you think you can win?" The nine-colored goddess looked at the culinary god with disdain. "I'm just saying, don't take it seriously." The culinary god laughed. In fact, from the moment Chu Bei had swung that probing sword, he had already regarded him as at least a first-tier god. "I really underestimated you." Just when everyone thought the battle was over, the angel god's cold voice spread from the sky. It carried a supreme pressure that reverberated in everyone's mind. Looking over, they saw the angel god's body that had been split into two fused back together. The golden blood also returned to the angel god's body. However, When the angel god's body returned to its original state, one of her golden soul rings exploded with a crack. Of the original 10 soul rings on her body, only 9 were left. Are gods immortal? Looking at the resurrected angel god, everyone was in disbelief. Is this the difference between a god and a human? Bibi Dong frowned. The angel god's ability was somewhat similar to his 100,000-year soul skill. The difference was that when she used that soul skill, her soul power and blood essence would be greatly consumed. However, the angel god seemed to be no different from before, except for the fact that she had 1 less golden soul ring. The time left for you is limited. Bring out some dry goods. Chu Bei smiled as he looked at the angel god. With a wave of his right hand, the serpentine sword formed from many types of strange flames swept towards the angel god. Seeing the snake-shaped sword coming at her again, the angel god frowned and flapped her 6 angelic wings. First, she retreated quickly. Then, she flapped her wings and did a 90-degree turn in the air. After successfully dodging the serpentine sword, the angel god snorted coldly. Then, as she chanted, she put her palms together. In the next moment, a huge sun appeared behind her. Angel, annihilation, buzz. As the 4 cold syllables rang out, the void between heaven and earth trembled violently. Everyone in the square suddenly trembled. They only felt as if their bodies were inexplicably being squeezed by an invisible force, and their bodies actually became sluggish for a moment. In the distant sky, when the scorching sun behind the angel god released rays of warm light, they all felt an incomparable heat spread through their limbs and bones. However, before they could enjoy this warmth, the blood in their bodies suddenly began to boil. The soul power in their bodies quickly dissipated like snow. In an instant, they found that they couldn't even summon their martial souls. What kind of power is that? Everyone realized that the soul power in their bodies had disappeared, and they all looked at the scorching sun behind the angel god in horror. However, under the control of the angel god, this scorching sun, which could dissolve soul power, was moving toward Chu Feng. Wherever the sun passed, the void rumbled. It was as if everything was imprisoned. Annihilation. The angel god uttered a single word. The sun disappeared, and when it reappeared, it was right in front of Chu Bei. The angel god's lips curled into a smile. This was one of her most powerful divine skills. Even a god's divine power would be annihilated in a short time. Far from enough. Just as the angel god was filled with anticipation, Chu Bei reached out with his right hand. A pitch-black vortex appeared in front of his palm. As the calm and collected voice came out of Chu Bei's mouth, the strange whirlpool in front of him suddenly emitted a roar. In an instant, the strange vortex expanded rapidly. The center of the vortex, which had a diameter of over 100 meters, released a terrifying suction force. It forcibly sucked the sun in. It was also at this moment that everyone realized that the soul power that had disappeared in their bodies had reappeared. Impossible. The angel god's expression changed for the first time. The smile on her face was replaced by astonishment. Angel's annihilation. This divine skill was famous even in the divine realm. It was also the main reason why she could become a first-tier god. In a battle between gods, this skill could temporarily purify the opponent's divine power. It could often be used in conjunction with a terrifying skill to defeat the opponent in one fell swoop. Before using this skill, she had thought of several moves that could severely injure the opponent. However, the prerequisite was that her angel's annihilation could temporarily disable the opponent's ability to fight. As the angel god stared blankly at the growing vortex in the distance, the shock in her eyes had yet to fade. Chu Bei pushed his right palm forward. Immediately, the brilliant flames in Chu Bei's palm pushed the strange vortex toward the angel god. The angel god seemed to sense the danger and immediately flapped her 6 wings. However, no matter how she flapped them, she could not resist the terrifying suction force of the vortex. In less than 3 seconds, his body was uncontrollably sucked into the bottomless black vortex. In an instant, the noisy atmosphere in the square was replaced by a deathly silence. Everyone felt as if they had been struck by lightning. It was as if they had lost their voices. Their minds were in a half-dazed state. Just as everyone stared at the black vortex in the distant sky, the angel god's pained howl came from the vortex. Then, there was an earth-shattering boom as the black vortex exploded. What followed was pieces of flesh dripping with golden blood, as well as the angel god's armor that had been reduced to countless pieces. "You deserve to die. You deserve to die." The angel god's hysterical roar was like a demonic voice from hell that spread through the void. Pieces of flesh and pieces of divine equipment were being reassembled in front of everyone's eyes. In the blink of an eye, the angel god appeared in perfect condition before everyone's eyes. However, compared to the previous time, the resurrected angel god had golden blood dripping from the corner of her mouth. There were several more pitch-black demonic patterns on her face. Her originally stunning appearance was now a little frightening. Not only that, but the number of golden soul rings on her body had decreased by 3. In addition to the soul ring she had previously lost, she now only had 6 soul rings left. In the distant sky, the angel god wiped the golden blood from the corner of her mouth. Her originally ferocious expression suddenly became calm. Her hands danced rhythmically. Every time her hands drew an arc, the golden light around her body became more and more solid. 2 in 1, 3 in 1, 4 in 1. The angel god's 6 remaining golden soul rings overlapped with each other. Only then did her hands stop moving. In the instant that the 6 combined, the sky turned completely golden. The only golden soul ring on her body suddenly increased in size by hundreds to thousands of times. At this moment, the true sun hanging high in the sky had been blocked out. Heaven and earth seemed to be filled with the golden light of this one and only soul ring, and even the sea on the westernmost side of the continent was illuminated with a golden color. Under the holy light, the angel god's body instantly transformed. 1 into 2, 2 into 4, 4 into 8. Under the astonished gazes of everyone, countless angel gods hovered in the air above the battlefield in just a few breaths. There was a huge golden soul ring behind each angel god. Although there were thousands of angel gods standing in different positions, the golden soul rings behind them all shone in the direction of Chubei. Everyone in the plaza felt as if their bodies were being weighed down by millions of kilograms of weight just by looking at the countless divine rings. The pressure was so great that they couldn't breathe. Great sun, angel, myriad suns soaring sky. Countless angel gods glared at Chubei fiercely, their eyes full of killing intent. In the next moment, they shouted at the same time, and the sound waves rolled in the sky. Amidst the uniform shouting, everyone in the plaza had an inexplicable illusion that the ground under their feet was slowly sinking. In front of the myriad suns soaring sky of the angel god, the myriad suns soaring sky of the thousand Daoflo were like a pile of dog shit. It was simply heaven and earth, and couldn't be compared at all. Rumble, rumble, rumble. In the collapsing sky, thousands of angel gods pushed the only huge golden soul ring towards Chubei at the same time. Countless soul rings intertwined, instantly forming a square space, and Chubei was in the center of this space. Rumble. A loud explosion came from the golden light, and everyone subconsciously closed their eyes. This light was too bright and dazzling, and even people as strong as Bibi Dong and Tang Hao had to close their eyes and use their divine sense to capture the scene that was happening on the battlefield. At this moment, the 20 gods who were watching the show also became serious. At their level, they could naturally tell that the battle between the two was about to end very soon. Is this considered your all-out attack? A calm voice suddenly came from the dazzling golden light that couldn't be seen through. Just from the voice alone, one could tell that the owner of the voice was very calm, and there wasn't the slightest fluctuation in his emotions. It's over. An ethereal sound that seemed to come from beyond the heavens reverberated out from the golden light. The sound waves formed by the sound waves caused ripples to appear in the solid golden light. They swept across the sky and spread to every corner of the Dolua continent. In the light, a huge screen with 22 dancing fire spirits could be faintly seen. This was the illusory screen behind Chubei from before. However, this time, It was clearly displayed in front of everyone's eyes. The aura released by any one of the 22 fire spirits dancing on it was enough to make one's heart palpitate. Suddenly, the screen shook, and the 22 fire spirits gathered together and jumped out of the screen at the same time. In an instant, the void shattered and collapsed. Amidst a frightening and strange buzzing sound, the impenetrable square light prison formed by the angel god, formed by countless intertwined golden soul rings, suddenly shattered. Chapter 248. On the battlefield, the light prison shattered, and the spectators were once again able to clearly see the scene on the battlefield. Tens of thousands of angel gods were still standing in different positions in the void, but the golden soul rings behind them were nowhere to be seen, and golden blood was dripping from the corners of their pale mouths. Rumble. 22 fire spirits surrounded Chu Bei like stars surrounding the moon. Each of them released a demonic flame, and under everyone's gaze, the different flames began to connect with each other. In an instant, the 22 fire spirits became a ring-shaped hole without any gaps, and then began to rotate around Chu Bei with a rhythm. As they rotated, pillars of flame shot straight into the sky, opening a gap in the distant sky. These 22 fire spirits seemed to be connected to the energy outside the Dolua continent, and a terrifying wave of energy that was different from the spiritual energy of the Dolua continent spread out. Under this energy, the sticky golden light that was originally enveloped by the angel god's domain dissipated instantly and was replaced by layers of flame ripples. The sea was no longer blue or golden, but had turned into a gorgeous rainbow. The moment the color of the sea changed, the aquatic spirit beasts were boiling and almost simultaneously let out excited cries. At this moment, the faces of the soul masters in every corner of the continent were brimming with joy. Previously, the angel god's terrifying method had caused the soul power in their bodies to disappear, but Boss Chu's method had indeed caused the soul power in their cells to become active, and some soul masters who were on the verge of a bottleneck even used this power to directly break through. His power is different from our divine power, and under this power, the divine power in my body actually feels suppressed. The culinary god frowned, and his eyes were fixed on Chu Bei, who was in the middle of the battlefield, with a look of horror on his face. At this moment, Chu Bei was in the center of the 22 fire spirits, and he seemed to be the commander of this huge monster. His expression and behavior did not change at all, and he still had a smile on his face. He looked at the angel gods around him calmly, and his hands were behind his back, looking calm and composed. Fury of the Flame Emperor. Chu Bei looked around indifferently, and his lips moved slightly. Upon hearing these emotionless and calm syllables, the expressions of the tens of thousands of angels and gods trembled at the same time, and an inexplicable sense of danger welled up in their hearts. However, before they could do anything, the 22 balls of fire spirits shot out tens of thousands of fire dragons amidst a strange buzzing sound. These fire dragons were releasing blinding flames, bringing with them a high temperature, and at the same time, there was no lack of soul-stirring coldness. 22 fire dragons formed a group, and each group did not intertwine with each other. Each group targeted a split angel god. In the blink of an eye, the countless angels on the battlefield were surrounded by 22 fire dragons. Not a single one escaped. The angel god's breathing became rapid, and fear finally appeared in his eyes. The 22 fire dragons around her were arranged as if they were following some kind of strange positioning array. The dragons spat out different kinds of flames that seeped into her body at the same time and actually sealed all of her divine power. Destroy. Chu Bei clenched his fist. As the cold syllables rang out, there was no deafening explosion in the distant sky. There were only blooming fireworks, and it was extremely beautiful. Everyone in every corner of the continent spread out. The scene in front of them did not look like a battle between gods at all. It looked more like a celebratory feast, especially the tens of thousands of beautiful fireworks that bloomed in the sky, stunning the heavens. As time passed, the fireworks on the battlefield dissipated. At this moment, the densely packed fire dragons had already disappeared, along with the thousands of angel gods. To be more precise, there was still an angel god on the battlefield, but this angel god's figure was rapidly becoming transparent. Bam, 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 bam. Under everyone's gaze, the angel god's only giant golden soul ring split into 6. Then, 6 earth-shattering explosions rang out, and the last 6 soul rings on the angel god's body completely shattered. I am a god, I won't die, I won't die. The armor on the angel god's body began to disintegrate, and her beautiful eyes stared fixedly at Chu Bei, filled with unwillingness and monstrous killing intent. I will be back. I will definitely be back. Hysterical roars and disheveled hair, she was no longer as pure and holy as she had been when she first descended. Now, she looked more like a cursing auntie. You're just an ant. So noisy. Chu Bei picked at his ear impatiently, then waved his sleeve. Flames brushed past like a breeze, and the angel god's final projection dissipated, leaving behind an unresigned voice that still echoed in the air. You're just an ant. Looking at the disappearing angel god in the sky, everyone in the square was flabbergasted. Their expressions were sluggish, and their minds were blank. Only Chu Bei's last words were left, repeating in their minds over and over again. This time, the angel god was defeated. She really was defeated. She didn't resurrect. Is this Boss Chu's true strength? In his eyes, even a powerful god like the angel god is just an ant. After this battle, do you think those gods will avenge the angel god? I don't think so. They're more like spectators. Also, I saw Boss Chu greet one of the gods. Presumably, even gods have their own circle. There are enemies and friends. I really want to know what the realms of the divine realm are, what realm the angel god is at, and what realm Boss Chu is at. After a long time, everyone came back to their senses, and the dead silence in the plaza was immediately replaced by clamor. This time, the exclamations reached a peak. Obviously, in these people's subconscious, the side they supported and hoped to win was Boss Chu. After all, in their view, the angel god was an invader from the divine realm, and Boss Chu was a native. Can I really defeat him after becoming the Rakshasa god? Looking at Chu Bei, who was standing in the sky like an emperor, Bibi Dong on the rostrum softly muttered, his expression wooden and somewhat absent-minded. Boss Chu is really terrifying. The White Tiger Emperor and the Snow Knight Emperor looked at each other, smiled, and finally let out a sigh. Sect Master Ning, you really have a good daughter. Yu Tianhao patted Ning Fengji's shoulder, his words filled with envy and jealousy. Haha, it's a blessing from the kindness accumulated in my previous life. Ning Fengji laughed loudly. How could he not understand the meaning of Yu Tianhao's words? It was nothing more than his precious daughter becoming Boss Chu's proxy. And with this thread, his 7 treasures glazed sect and all heaven's shop were inextricably linked in countless ways. It could be said that he had a powerful backer. Is this our boss? He defeated the sea god, the angel god. On the battle stage, Zhu Zhuqing stared blankly at Chu Bei's back in the sky, her cold little face filled with astonishment. Zhuqing, let the boss be our wedding witness in the future. Dai Mubai rubbed his palms, pointed at Chu Bei, and looked at Zhu Zhuqing expectantly. Zhu Zhuqing, I want to earn more money in the future. I want to be as strong as the boss. Ma Hongjuan's evil phoenix martial soul lit up, his hands clenched into fists as if he had been injected with chicken blood. Did you guys realize that we can exchange for rank 81 soul power now? Ning Rongrong seemed to have discovered something. She suddenly exclaimed, her face full of joy. It's really possible. That's great. We can take a shortcut again. After confirming that the upper limit of soul power had increased by a large realm, Oscar, Dai Mubai, and the others looked at each other excitedly. Rumble, high in the sky, Chu Bei waved his sleeves, and the 22 fire spirits around him returned to his body. Following that, the flames that filled the sky dissipated, and the color of the sea returned to blue. Everything returned to normal. Chu Bei stood with his hands behind his back, his gaze sweeping across the 20 gods. Finally, his gaze fixed on Poseidon, the sea god, and he smiled and nodded in greeting. It's really an honor to be able to witness Boss Chu's skills again. Poseidon shook the golden trident in his hand and smiled. In the future, I'll have to trouble you to take care of my agents, Chu Bei said politely. I heard from Poseidon that you're a god from outside the Dolua continent? The god of light was confused. Chu Bei looked at the god of light, whose aura was no weaker than Poseidon's, and said calmly, "Didn't you watch the entire battle between me and that birdman? I'm sure you know the answer in your heart." "Yes. Can you tell us about the cultivation laws outside the Dolua continent? Do they all cultivate the same power system as you?" The god of light asked curiously as he recalled the 22 strange fires that Chu Bei had summoned at the end. "The world outside the Dolua continent is much bigger than you think. Your Dolua continent is just a tiny existence in one of the many galaxies out there." Chu Bei was very serious. Thousands of galaxies? The god of light was not the only one who was confused. The other gods were also confused. When you're able to break through the barrier, you can go to the outside world to take a look. The powerhouses there are far more terrifying than you can imagine. Chu Bei continued to be perfunctory. After he finished speaking, he flew down to the arena below. The outside world. Huh? The gods murmured, and their eyes were filled with fighting spirit. Chu Bei's words seemed to have rekindled their previously extinguished passion. The battle is over. It's time to go back. Our appearance must have affected the people of the continent. We can't stay here any longer. The god of light took one last look at Chu Bei, and his projection gradually disappeared. Following him, the other 19 gods' phantoms also disappeared one after another, along with the terrifying pitch-black hole in the sky. In the westernmost part of the continent, Oceanic City, that powerful existence was killed by Boss Chu. Who knows what Boss Chu said to those gods in the end? Have all the gods returned to the divine realm? Are only level 100 gods able to go to the divine realm? I'm really thankful for Boss Chu's last flame power. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have been able to break through. I've decided. From now on, apart from the sea god, I'll also have this Boss Chu as my believers. Who wants to go with me? Let's go visit Boss Chu together. After the gods in the sky left and there was no one left, the pedestrians on the main road in the city came back to their senses one after another and started discussing. In the sea, the deep-sea magic whale king leaped out of the water, and its huge tail created a 100-meter wave. Even the angel god was defeated. Looks like he really has a way to help me break through. The deep-sea sunglasses king looked inland with its large single eye, and there was some anticipation in its muttering. The stronger the opponent was, the more trustworthy their words were. As for its initial thoughts of revenge, it had long since given up. Even if it took the final step to become a demon god, it didn't have the confidence to defeat veteran gods like the sea god and the angel god, let alone Boss Chu, who was even more powerful than them. In the heart of the great Heaven Do forest, the two overlords of the forest, the sky azure bull python and the titan giant ape, looked at each other in silence for a long time. The battle between Chu Bei and the angel god came to an end. The gods left, and the soul masters and ordinary people in every corner of the Dolua continent came back to their senses one after another. After this battle, everyone on the Dolua continent knew of a super powerhouse who could defeat a powerful god. He was the owner of the All Heavens shop. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.